the Winter Dragon Lord of Game of Thrones. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 26, A Night of the Seven Kingdoms. When Cole arrived at the hall, it was already crowded. Sir Blackfish left at the door, and no one knew where he was going. After seeing Bronn in the hall, Cole walked towards him. He was lying under a pillar, looking lazy. The hall was brightly lit, and torches were flashing with blazing flames. Lady Lysa, who was sitting in a high position, was wearing a black gauze dress. She summoned the knights and nobles to publicly listen to the confession of the little devil. With a clang, the valve was pushed open, and several knights escorted Tyrion in. "It seems that your dwarf friend is in trouble," Bronn said to him. Cole turned his eyes to Tyrion, who happened to be looking over, and nodded in this direction. The knight pushed Tyrion to the center of the hall, and then stepped back to both sides. He staggered a few steps, steadied his body, and saluted upwards. Lady Catelyn Stark asked directly, "I heard that you intend to plead guilty?" "Yes, my lady," Tyrion replied. Lysa Arryn smiled at her sister, with some pride in her eyes. Her dungeon could make anyone surrender, even the legendary little devil. "Speak," Lady Lysa ordered Tyrion. Unexpectedly, Tyrion slapped her face and said, "Where should I start? I admit that I'm a little villain." He looked like he was playing crazy and talking about some insignificant crimes. His tone was also a little humorous. It didn't seem like he was confessing his guilt, but rather like he was making fun of himself. That funny look caused laughter in the hall. "Shut up." Lysa Arryn was irritated by his appearance. "Alas, I'm confessing my guilt, my lady. You are accused of sending someone to assassinate my son Bran, who is bedridden, and conspiring to kill the king's prime minister, Lord Jon Arryn." Tyrion shrugged. "I'm afraid I can't admit these charges." Lady Lysa stood up from her throne angrily and hurriedly asked the knights of the Arryn Valley to take the little devil back to the dungeon. What no one expected was that Tyrion suddenly shouted loudly, "Is there any justice in the Vale of Arryn? Is there no honor in the Bloody Gate? You accused, I denied, and you threw me to the Broken Sky prison to starve and freeze?" He raised his head. "Where is the king's justice? You said someone accused me of a crime. Well, I demand a fair trial. Let the gods in the sky and the people on the earth decide the truth of what I said." Lysa Arryn smiled disdainfully. "A fair trial, that's fine. This is the Vale of Arryn, and the judge is his son Robert Arryn." She ordered the servants to open the moon door, which is the way the Eyrie executes criminals, directly letting the prisoners feel the soaring, and then smashing them into a pulp. Tyrion sneered in his heart, and glanced at a pillar in the hall. "My dear lady, I don't think there is any need to disturb Lord Robert. The gods in heaven will clear my name. I'm willing to let them make the judgment. I demand trial by combat." Instantly, laughter rose and fell. Everyone was amused by his actions. Only Catelyn and Sir Blackfish did not laugh. They kept looking at the child under the pillar. Catelyn frowned and was about to turn around to remind her sister. Unexpectedly, Our Lady Lysa Arryn just said with surprise, "Of course you have the right." In an instant, more than a dozen knights took the initiative to volunteer. Such opportunities are rare. Not only can they curry favor with the Arryn family, but if they use their heroics to win the heart of Lady Lysa, they will not only win the beauty, but also personally rule the Arryn Valley. Lysa did not accept any of them, but called Ser Vardis Aegon, who was the captain of the guard of the former king's hand, Lord Jon Arryn. Yes, our bastard Jon was named after this name. Lord Jon was the adoptive father of the northern Lord Eddard Stark. So Lord Eddard had to call Lysa his sister-in-law and his adoptive mother. TSK, TSK, TSK. Look at this confusing relationship. Please give this important task to someone else. I really have no intention of fighting. This man is not a warrior. Vardis pointed at Tyrion. Look at him, a dwarf, only half my height. I think my brother would be happy to fight for me. Your great Kingslayer is 100 miles away. Lysa scolded. You must duel with Ser Vardis tomorrow. Tyrion turned around and talked to the singer Merillion, asking him to make a song about Lysa's prohibition on him from finding a substitute knight. Lysa was furious. What am I saying? Little devil, if you have the guts, just pick a replacement knight. Sir Cole, your employer needs help now. Tyrion shouted towards the pillar. Lyssa was stunned and a little dumbfounded. She followed Tyrion's gaze and saw a young man standing upright. He was not small, nor too strong, but his face was handsome, and he looked young. You want to fight for the little devil? Lyssa asked. He just thought that the child looked like a harmless bard. Cole bowed slightly. Yes, my lady. I'm willing to fight on behalf of Tyrion Lannister. Do you understand what you are doing? She threatened. Of course. How can I stand idly by when my friend is in trouble? He answered fearlessly. She was still looking at the unfamiliar knight, but her sister Catelyn suddenly said loudly, "This child is not a knight at all." Cole was shocked for a moment. He just felt how similar they were. Is the identity of a knight so important that he is not even qualified for trial by combat? No one would tell him that the identity of a knight is not important. There are knights everywhere in the Seven Kingdoms. But here, knights are very important. Lyssa looked at her sister and saw that she was staring at her with dissatisfaction. She suddenly smiled. Little demon, is this the acting knight you are looking for? Did you appoint him personally? He has no right to act as an agent for others. Tyrion was also stunned. He seemed not to have thought about this problem. He could only say stubbornly, everyone is equal under the gods. If you can't find a knight to fight for you, then fight yourself tomorrow, little demon. I have given you a chance. I wonder which kind knight can appoint this child. You will definitely be proud of it. Tyrion looked around, and his eyes looked at Bronn. This guy's definitely a knight, but he has no title. Only knights can appoint knights. The whole audience was silent and no one spoke. Bronn narrowed his eyes, not knowing what he was thinking. He raised his foot, but someone spoke first. Let me do it. The voice was broad and steady. Everyone looked at it. It was the Blackfish Brandon Tully. Uncle, what are you doing? Lyssa's face finally showed a trace of ferocity. She couldn't understand why her uncle did this. I saw Sir Blackfish walk down the stand. The trial must be upright. This child is willing to fight for his friends. I approve of his behavior. He is like a knight. Blackfish walked in front of Cole and drew his sword. Kneel down, child. Cole looked at him gratefully and then knelt on one knee. In the name of the warrior, I command you to be brave. In the name of the father, I command you to be fair. In the name of the virgin, I command you to be merciful. In the name of the girl, I command you to be kind. In the name of the blacksmith, I command you to be diligent. In the name of the old woman, I command you to be rational. In the name of the stranger, I command you to be spiritual. The seven gods bless you, the knight of the seven kingdoms. Cole, please stand up. He tapped Cole's shoulders one by one with his sword. P.S. I really like this original text, which is also the reason why this plot is set up, so there are more quotations. Well, I copied a paragraph, but it is also a little changed. The protagonist finally became an upright knight. Chapter 27 Let him fly. Uncle, do you know what you are doing? You are helping the damn Lannister. Lyssa's hands and feet were flying around in the room, her face full of anger. Catelyn was also very confused by his behavior. Is this still the Uncle Brandon who listened to them and shared their joys and sorrows? The two ladies who were already mothers stared at Blackfish. Blackfish slowly said, how long do you plan to let this farce go on? The Kingslayer has gathered outside Riverrun, and the war is about to begin. If we kill that dwarf now, we will have no room for negotiation. Farce. Uncle's damn little devil killed my husband. He must die. My knights will beat that kid to a pulp. Lyssa said very confidently. I don't care what the dwarf will do. If you want to judge him, go ahead. But I will take 1,000 cavalrymen to support your father and brother. Lyssa sat back in her chair arrogantly. The garrison of the Eyrie will not be reduced by one man. Uncle, you are a knight of the Bloody Gate, and you should be here. Catelyn didn't expect her sister to say such a thing. She looked at her uncle and saw that his face was red with anger. Go to hell with the Knight of the Bloody Gate. Whether it's Blackfish or not, I'm a Tully after all. I will go back to Riverrun tonight. Are you going to break your oath, uncle? Blackfish turned around suddenly. I won't be a Knight of the Bloody Gate in the future. You can find another one from those idiots who flatter you. After saying that, he strode out of the door angrily. How can you talk to your uncle like that? Catelyn looked at her sister in astonishment and then rushed out. "Uncle Brandon." Catelyn shouted at Blackfish. The fast-moving Blackfish stopped. "Little Kate, do you also blame me for canonizing that boy?" Blackfish looked at Catelyn with a pair of angry eyes. Catelyn shook her head. "No, uncle. He is worthy of being a knight." Blackfish's complexion improved a little. "Uncle, don't blame Lyssa." Seeing her uncle's angry eyes, Catelyn had to ask, "Are you going alone? That mountain road is impossible to walk alone. Sir Roderick and I are also preparing to return to Winterfell. You can come with us. I will give the 1,000 elite soldiers. Reveron will never fight alone." Blackfish looked at Catelyn's face, and his memory seemed to go back to the girl who was crying and complaining to him. He sighed. "That's it. I'll wait for you downstairs." Catelyn did not go back, but walked back to her residence in the tower. At this moment, she felt regret again. Lyssa had become so different that she almost didn't recognize her. What happened to her over the years? Did the gods also think that Lannister was innocent and Tyrion was her prisoner and Lyssa had no right to judge? She couldn't help but wonder if it was right to let the boy go and why her uncle wanted to canonize him. Cole was in a very complicated mood when he walked back to his residence. Even if he was a knight, it was not very grand, and he did not feel happy. This identity did not bring him any real sense of honor, and no one would look up to him because of this. He was still a humble ant without a surname. He could have lied. No one would care whether an unknown person was a knight or not. Even if he was just a wild knight. Only after being awarded by the nobles could he get a surname and a title. But at least he would not be troubled by this matter again. Sir Blackfish's timely help helped Tyrion and him, at least giving him a little dignity. Even if Cole could not make a move, there would be Bronn. The clever mercenary knew how to seize the opportunity. Tomorrow he would help Tyrion in the trial by combat. The enemy was a famous Knight of the Vale. The children of the Arin Valley might forget the Kingsguard and White Harbor Knight in the game, but they would never forget to play the Knight of the Vale. There is the most intense knight atmosphere here, which is why Catelyn directly shouted that he was not a knight. The continent is in chaos. Only the Vale is high up in the mountains and slowly claims the throne and builds high walls. Here are the most elite knights of the 7 kingdoms. When the Blood Gate opens, it will surely shock the whole of Westeros. Cole looked at the waves of clouds outside the window. In fact, the Vale has the foundation of the kingly way. It is not unreasonable for the Andals to start conquering from here. I wonder if the woman sitting on the throne now has this perception. Cole shook his head. What does this have to do with him? He just wants to be like the original Bronn, get a noble identity, and then get a better territory, preferably in the Riverbend, and then marry a noble woman he likes, study food and drink every day, and enjoy until death. He wiped the winter night with sword oil. After so many battles along the way, it was still as cold as when he first saw it. It is indeed a good sword. He really owes Vigor great favor. The next morning, the castle became noisy. Cole calmed down and slept well last night. If Cole looked back, he would find that he had changed a lot. The boy who used to stay awake all night because of a trivial matter has become a man who is calm in the face of things. He put on his armor that was missing pieces. The enemy would definitely be fully armed, but Cole was confident that he could win this battle. After several life and death battles, his killing skills had reached perfection. As soon as Cole went out, he saw a knight standing outside. He led Cole to a garden. There were already people here. A big iron man was being armored by the servants. He was Cole's opponent, Sir Vardis. Lady Lyssa sat high on the open-air balcony. Sitting on the main chair was a thin child. Sitting below was a puppeteer performing acrobatics, which made him laugh. The guests raised their glasses and drank more. They didn't think it was a fight, but a noble party. Catelyn Stark had just walked in at this time, and her sister Lyssa came forward to give her a hug and kiss. But Catelyn's face did not show any joy. She just said worriedly, "Lyssa, you can't go on making trouble. The little devil is valuable only when he is alive. And if the child wins." Earl Hunter interrupted her. "Madam, I don't think it's possible." "My lord, are you so sure?" Catelyn said coldly. She knew the child's ability. 5 or 6 mountain men couldn't hurt him. Catelyn and her sister argued for a while. Lyssa was stubborn and arrogant and didn't listen to anything. At this time, our Lord Robert suddenly shouted excitedly, "The little bad guy is here. Mommy, I want to see him fly. Can you let him fly?" Tyrion was brought up by several knights. He looked around and finally found Cole. Cole smiled at him, as if giving him a reassurance. The boy seemed a little impatient. He kept pestering his mother to see the dwarf fly. Suddenly bells rang below, and the monk who witnessed the trial walked to the stone statue in the center of the garden. It was a weeping woman, Alessa. The river called Alessa's Tears on the giant's spear was named after her. Ser Vardis had finished putting on his armor, and the squire was bringing up his sword. Cole also walked slowly towards the open space in the garden. "Let him fly, let him fly," Lord Robert Arryn shouted. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 28 Duel. Ser Vardis was wearing a full set of heavy armor, gauntlets, iron gloves, plate mail, a metal group like a lobster shell, a steel neck guard, and a hawk beak shaped mask with only a small gap for the eyes. Cole also had ring mail, but it was missing half a corner, a bumpy metal helmet, and a mask borrowed from the armory, with plates on his arms and leggings on his heels. Compared with the metal-filled Knights of the Vale, Cole's outfit looked like a jester. Ser Vardis looked like a white and elegant temple warrior, while Cole looked like a wild man outside the Great Wall. The two knelt on one knee under the statue of Alessa, with the little demon standing between them. The Septon took out a multifaceted crystal, and the refracted sunlight flashed 7 colors of rainbow. He solemnly prayed to the gods, asking them to witness this trial. The voice echoed and lingered. As Tyrion was led away, he whispered to Cole's side, "He is wearing a lot of clothes. He must be very tired." Cole smiled knowingly. Vardis took the sword from the squire. The sword was very beautiful, with a silver threaded texture, a falcon head on the hilt, and a guard with spread wings, which looked like a soaring eagle. He tried to swing it a few times. Cole also drew his sword, and it instantly became as cold as the night. Lady Lyssa, who was still boasting about the carved silver sword, suddenly shut up. Everyone asked in their hearts, how could this poor knight have such a sword? Ser Vardis saluted the lord loudly, "Fight for the Eyrie and the Vale of Arryn." Cole wanted to shout, but he didn't know what to shout. "You can't fight for the wall, right?" Vardis turned around and picked up the rounds of the shield. Cole drew another sword with his backhand. Wow, there was an uproar in an instant. Someone exclaimed, "This man actually uses a sword with both hands." Catelyn thought of the past that her husband Ned told her when she asked him who the mother of his illegitimate child was. Was it the Asher Dane in the rumors? His husband did not answer him, but ordered her not to ask again. Later, perhaps out of guilt, he would talk about the legendary knight Arthur Dane, who people preferred to call Dawnblade. Sir Dawnblade used a two-handed sword, Dawn sword for attack and steel sword for defense. Whenever Ned recalled the knight in white, he would always show respect. It was a battle of 10 people, but in the end only 2 survived. When Catelyn looked at the duel field, the 2 had already crossed together. The child directly crossed his 2 swords against Ser Vardis' silver sword. He saw that he exerted a lot of force, and the knight in heavy armor actually staggered back a few steps. Cole did not defend at all. His 2 swords attacked fiercely like a hurricane, and Ser Vardis could only hold up his shield and retreat continuously. Occasionally, Vardis seized the gap and swung 2 swords, but Cole always dodged them flexibly. He could not hit at all, but was constantly attacked like a slow turtle. Everyone present was shocked by the scene. Some noble girls even worried that their knights were going to lose. Bronn shook his head secretly. How could they fight like this? They obviously couldn't break through the armor, but they were still attacking randomly. It was just a waste of energy. They would definitely lose after exhausting their strength. That's right, Bronn thought the same as Tyrion. That is, to wear down the opponent. Vardis was not young to begin with, and he couldn't last long wearing such heavy armor. Cole, on the other hand, compared his strength with him, which was completely thankless. Vardis was frightened and kept retreating. Others thought he could resist easily, but every time this kid slashed with his sword, it was like a heavy hammer. He had to slow down for a long time every time he blocked it. No one could see the sweat pouring out of his back. He thought he was experienced in many battles, but this was the first time he had seen such a fighting style. It was too brutal, and only he knew that the boy's sword became stronger and faster as he swung it. The most terrifying thing was that he only attacked and didn't defend. With a bang, the shield was actually chopped by Cole, and the fragments were scattered all over the ground. Vardis quickly grasped the sword with both hands, and the one-handed sword could not block his attack at all. Cole attacked from all directions, up and down, left and right. If Vardis took the sword, he would have to use his armor to take the sword. The armor that originally looked majestic and solemn was now dented. Caitlyn couldn't help but wonder what would happen if such a person put on heavy armor on the battlefield. At this moment, some people couldn't help but think of the notorious guy, the Mountain. What would happen if this man fought against the Mountain? Those who have seen the Mountain secretly compared Cole's size with his, and it was obvious that the giant would have the upper hand. Sir Vardis's hands began to tremble, and his armor was broken. The battle had been going on for nearly 10 minutes, and suddenly Cole's movements began to slow down. He's tired, someone thought in his heart. Vardis seemed to have found his chance and thrust his sword at Cole's chest. The silver sword gleamed brightly in the sun. No one thought his black ring mail could withstand the blow. Tyrion's heart almost rose to his throat. He prayed in his heart, little ranger, you have never let me down. Don't lose. Cole suddenly stepped aside, threw a sword, and then grabbed Vardis' wrist and put Winter Knight on his neck. You have already lost, sir, he said softly. Vardis wanted to pull his arm back, but he felt that it was clamped tightly, and he couldn't move at all. Cole bent his hand and heard the bone snap. He screamed and the silver sword fell to the ground. Sweat poured down his forehead. He steadied his body and snorted coldly, I can still fight. Cole hit his head with the sword, and he staggered a few times and fell to the ground. The heavy armor made it difficult for him to get up. Cole picked up the carved silver sword and threw it in front of him. If you still want to fight, then stand up. Vardis gritted his teeth and propped himself up, but he felt as if a mountain was pressing down on him. His eyes flashed with unwillingness, and he looked up at the vast sky. Finally, he used up his last bit of strength and said, I lost. After taking a breath, he pulled out his helmet and took the sword. I'm ashamed of Lord Jon. Mommy, why don't they fight anymore? Lord Robert asked with great interest. It's over, baby. Lyssa waved her hand. Someone help Ser Vardis take off his armor. Then can we watch the little scoundrel fly? The boy continued to ask. Tyrion walked to Cole's side with a smile and said, the little scoundrel may not be able to fly. He plans to go down the mountain with radish in a basket. Thank you for your concern, I thought. Without waiting for Lady Lyssa to speak, the little devil said, I thought the Arryn family still remembered their family language, as high as glory. Lyssa was so angry that she quickly drove the guest away. Come on, send Lord Lannister and his monster away to me. P.S. Happy Mid-Autumn Festival. Chapter 29 The Devil. Salted beef, dry bread. Lady Lyssa is really generous. Tyrion looked at the supplies that the Knights of the Bloody Gate stuffed into their hands. Selyn Corbray looked grim. I wish you a safe journey, Lord Lannister. Seeing their expressions of swallowing shit, for some reason, Tyrion felt a little secretly happy. But soon he couldn't laugh anymore. Walking on the rugged mountain road, he couldn't help but recall the dangers of this journey. He thought of those mountain wilds, whose weapons and equipment were extremely simple. Thinking of the greedy jailer he bribed in prison, an idea flashed through his mind. Beep, a whistle sounded, and a figure turned behind the mountain poplar tree beside the mountain road. Bronn. The mercenary spread his hands and walked up. It seems that the knights think I'm one of your gang. It's good to have one more person now, Tyrion thought. What are you going to do? Fight back? The mercenary looked at the two men. It's several days away from the Trident. Those mountain people are like ghosts and may rush out at any time. Fighting back is not a good option. Cole analyzed. I mean, do you have any good ideas? Bronn continued to ask. No, why not find a place to hide and wait for the Lannisters to attack the Eyrie, then we will come out. This is a bad idea, Cole. Tyrion shook his head. They can't last long with just this little food. What's more, with his father's temperament, even if he would rather lead his troops to attack the north, he would not come to attack the Eyrie. This place was built like an iron barrel by the nobles of the Arin Valley. Maybe we should talk to our new friends, Tyrion said confidently. New friends? Bronn was a little confused. Tyrion waved his hand. Let's go. There's still a long way to go. He walked in front, swaying, looking unconcerned. Bronn looked at Cole and saw that he also looked indifferent. He suddenly felt that his brain was not enough. So what makes you so confident? If we leave him behind, I think we can rush back to the Riverlands with light equipment. I can hear you, Tyrion shouted in front without looking back. Cole smiled and said, in fact, I wanted to leave. I didn't have to come to the Eyrie in the first place. Patting his shoulder, believe me, you won't suffer if you follow Lannister. Although Bronn is indeed a profit seeker, it is undeniable that this guy is a man with a bottom line. He will do things if he is paid, although he has a lot of dirty talk. But at least he will not be like those high-level players in the Game of Thrones. You betray me, I betray you. Smart people don't need to say too much. Obviously Bronn also realized the opportunity. In the conversation along the way, he realized that this dwarf is not what he seems, but an extremely smart person. Although he didn't seize the first opportunity, the little devil is obviously still in trouble now, and it is a good time to help him. He feels that Cole is much smarter than him in this regard. Haha, if you know that he is grabbing your opportunity, you won't think so. So what do you want, Bronn? Tyrion asked as he walked. Golden dragon, woman, or glory? Now every bit of fighting power is worth winning over. Anyway, as long as he can return to Casterly Rock alive, these things are not worth mentioning. Bronn curled his lips. Maybe it's glory. I really love glory, just like the Unsullied love to visit brothels. As long as you protect me, you can have whatever you want. After leaving the patrol range of the Bloody Gate, there were only rocks and mountains along the way. They tried to speed up their pace and walked in silence. Any noise at any moment might attract the attack of the mountain wildlings. I want to rest. After walking for half a day, Tyrion suddenly stopped. It was okay to ride a horse, but it was impossible for him to walk for a whole day. His deformed legs could not withstand such pressure. It's better to make a fire and eat. My stomach is almost empty. Are you eager to die, Lannister? The fire will attract the surrounding wildlings. Bronn spit on the ground. Those wildlings have spies everywhere. They will come, even if we don't make a fire. Tyrion pulled a dead branch and reached out to Cole. Do you have a flint? I'm not your squire, Tyrion. Cole took out a flint from the cloth bag. I know. You are a knight of the Seven Kingdoms, Sir Cole. He suddenly grinned. A virgin knight. Women can't save you now, only knights can. Cole patted his sword. My 7 layers of hell, look at you proud. But now if you give me a woman, it's worth it even if I die. The woman you want is here. Bronn drew his sword. Dark shadows flashed around, and soon a dozen mountain wildlings surrounded them in the center. These natives were men and women, wrapped in furs, and except for a few male mountain men who were a little sturdy, all were dry. No, our new friends are here. Tyrion threw down the branch and wiped his hands on his clothes. Tyrion walked to Bronn's side and pressed down his sword. Don't scare your friends with this thing. Welcome everyone. Would you like to enjoy a pleasant dinner with us? We have the best beef and toast. Tyrion shouted to the group of mountain people. Kill half of them. We can eat mutton. The burly wild man said. A tall and thin wild man pointed a knife at Tyrion. Remember to tell your gods that the one who sent you to heaven was Gunther, son of Gun of the Stone Crows. Shagger, son of Dov. The burly wild man shouted. I'm Tywin, son of the Lannister tribe. Tyrion. Tyrion pointed at Cole. He is. He is. I don't think we need to fight with swords. Tyrion turned the conversation and said. He patted Cole's armor and then patted his helmet. These armors are good stuff. I can give them all to you. Ha ha ha. A mountain man named Khan laughed. Kill the half a man, and these things will be ours too. A group of wild men laughed with him. The half man is going to use our things to compensate us. Only one wild man named Torek didn't laugh. His eyes were fixed on Cole. Kill them, and then let the half man milk the sheep. Shagger ordered. Obviously he was the leader of this group of people. Cole drew his sword and glanced at the wild man named Torek, who was so scared that he collapsed to the ground. It's him. It's the devil. The wild man looked at Cole. Is this the devil that Torek mentioned? Cole didn't recognize that this man was one of the 2 barbarian cavalrymen who besieged him. For a moment, the wild men dared not act rashly. The burly shagger came up with an axe. He was not afraid of any devil. He was the most powerful warrior of the Stone Crow tribe. He wanted to cut off the devil's penis and feed it to the goats. Cole blocked it with his sword and pulled out Winter Knight to hit it. Shagger only felt a shock in his head, and then he fell to the ground with a bang. Cole was really afraid of brute force. The wildlings swallowed their saliva. A flash of joy appeared in Tyrion's eyes. Gunther, son of Gun, my family is rich and powerful, and there are countless warriors like you. If you protect us and get out of the mountains safely, then I can give you equipment that is 1,000,000 times better than this. The words of the plainsman are worthless. You can see it yourself. His sword can kill you easily, and those in your hands are only suitable for killing sheep. Tyrion pointed at Winter Knight. There are many swords like this in my tribe. Son of Tywin, have you decided to exchange your life for a sword? Or a spear? Armor? Son of Gun, these are not the problems. Tyrion knew that his goal had been achieved, and he smiled and said, I can give you more, such as the entire Vale of Arryn. Everyone knew that he was bragging, but because of Cole's martial arts and the temptation of equipment, the heart of the mountain man began to waver. Chapter 30 Stone Crow Tribe. When Shagger, the son of Doff, woke up, he couldn't help rubbing his eyes frantically. Gunther, Khan, Toril, half a man, devil? Why are they eating together by the fire? They look like people from the same tribe. Okay, he's awake. Tyrion said. He walked to Shagger's side. They want to listen to your opinion on everything they say, saying that every freeman has the right to speak. Opinion? Cut off the half man and feed it to the goats? Shagger scratched his head, obviously not knowing what the situation was. Tyrion's face darkened. You should talk to him yourself. Cole couldn't help laughing. Sorry, although he has been professionally trained, he couldn't help it. Gunther repeated Tyrion's conditions, and Shagger's eyes widened instantly. There is such a good thing? Question mark? He leaned close to Gunther's ear and whispered, such a good thing should be known to the people in the tribe. We are preparing to take the half-man back to the tribe, just waiting for you to wake up. Shagger jumped up directly. He glanced at Cole, and he was still a little scared. If the half-man deceives us, chop him up, and feed him to the goats, he threatened. I don't know why this kid is so enthusiastic about this, but fortunately they finally gained the trust of Shagger and his men. Shagger and his men led Cole and the other 2 into the mountains, walked through low bushes, walked through winding stone paths, until the moon was in the sky. They finally arrived at the Stone Crow tribe. Thatched huts and leather tents were scattered in a stone forest. The terrain here was complex, and not suitable for cavalry charges. It seemed that they chose a site with some care. No one can catch up with the free people in the mountains, Shagger said confidently. Shagger, a patrolling team of free people followed the sound. Where did you go? The leading free man asked. I went to do something big. He gave up his position, revealing Tyrion in the shadows. I'm taking Tywin's son to see the elders. He led Cole and his men excitedly towards the center of the camp, and the other free people dispersed after returning to the tribe. The elder of the Stone Crow tribe was very old, thin and weak, with a hoarse and weak voice. He raised his cloudy eyes and assessed Cole and his companions. Shagger, won't you introduce your friends? This is the son of Tywin from the Lannister tribe, and this is... He couldn't remember the other 2 names. The names of these Flatlanders were hard to remember. Lannister of the Lion family. The Stone Crow elder revealed Tyrion's identity in one sentence. Cole immediately felt that this old man was different from other tribesmen. Yes, I'm Tyrion Lannister, the son of Lord Tywin Lannister. Tyrion bowed slightly. I wonder what the Lannister family has to do with coming to my Stone Crow tribe. It's a good thing, elder. Shagger said excitedly. Good things? The Stone Crow elder shook his head. The Lannister family is at war. I don't think you can bring any good things. War? Tyrion was a little stunned. He thought in his mind, did his father really lead the army to the Eyrie? He quickly denied it. It was impossible. His father had never been such a reckless person. Moreover, he wished that this shame of his would die sooner. Perhaps it was the so-called family honor that he believed in. No one could humiliate a Lannister. A Lannister would repay his debts. With his father's style of doing things, he should put pressure on the North or Reveron, but he should not dare to go too far. After all, he still had to give his cheap brother-in-law, King Robert, some face. He suddenly had an idea. I know what you need. I hope the Stone Crow tribe can fight for me. I will give you wealth, armor, weapons, and even fiefdoms, so that you don't have to hide from the Knights of the Vale. The Stone Crow elder fell into deep thought. No matter how knowledgeable he was, he still thought like a free man. As long as the benefits were big enough, they would take risks. I don't want to gamble with the fate of the Stone Crows, and your words are not convincing, Lannister. Shagga said anxiously. Elder, look at that sword. There are many tribes of Tywin's son. The Stone Crow elder looked at his silly warrior, sighed silently in his heart, and changed the subject. If you can get the recognition of several other high mountain tribes, then I will agree to Shagga leading the warriors of the tribe to fight for you. Good guy, Cole exclaimed in his heart. This is a rhythm of dragging other tribes into the water together. If you win the bet, the cake will be divided. Anyway, Tyrion's exaggeration is big enough. It doesn't matter if you lose. Anyway, the conflict of the High Mountain tribe is just a conflict between several tribes. Everyone's strength is damaged, and it will be balanced. And the test came to Tyrion. He had to convince these tribes to fight for him, otherwise he would not get the support of the Stone Crows. But he originally just wanted to return to the Riverlands as soon as possible. He just wanted to sleep on the soft feather bed and drink a glass of grape wine. Tyrion looked around. He was already deep in the center of the High Mountain clan. He also boasted that, even if he wanted to leave now, these barbarians would not allow him to do so. Without the things he promised, do you think these irritable guys would let them go peacefully? No matter how powerful Cole and Bronn were, they could not slaughter a tribe completely. He had to bite the bullet and jump into the pit he had dug by his own mouth. Okay, I will go and persuade other tribes, but the Stone Crow tribe must send people to protect us. If I'm gone, then you will not get anything. Tyrion said in a sonorous and powerful voice. I will let Shagga escort you. The Stone Crow elder finally smiled. His teeth had all fallen out, and there was only a black hole when he opened his mouth. He ordered Shagga, Shagga, take the guests to rest. Tyrion also forced a smile, but it was a bit far-fetched. They were taken to a thatched hut by Shagga, and Shagga pointed to another hut on the side. I live there, call me if you need anything. After leaving them here, he left. Bronn kicked the dead branches and leaves on the ground with his boots. These mountain people's houses for receiving guests are not as good as stables. You can't expect them to find you a woolen bed. At least tonight you don't have to worry about shadow cats biting our necks off. Cole walked into the low house. These wildlings are not much different from shadow cats. Maybe a free woman will climb on you and help you become a man. Bronn followed him in. Then you'd better be careful that your second brother doesn't get bitten off. Tyrion followed suit, and his worries were relieved with the joke. Cole looked at the two speechlessly. It really is Crouching Dragon and Phoenix Chick, right? Chapter 31 Revenge. You must take my place, just as I took my father's place, until we return home. I will return home as soon as the war is over. Well, mother will be back soon, and I will bring father back too, I promise you. Bran sat in the study of Winterfell. Rob's words seemed to be still ringing in his ears. The place was empty, and little Rickon was still disobedient. Everyone was gone, including his father, mother, and sister. Now even his eldest brother Rob was gone. He stared out the window absent-mindedly. There was really no noise in Winterfell at the moment, and the world was silent. He couldn't help but think of what the wildling Osha said. The power of the old gods cannot reach the south, and the fish beams there have long been cut down. Bran thought stubbornly, whether it was the old gods or the new gods, they must bless them to return safely. Shagga led the group of people from yesterday to escort Cole and others to other tribes to lobby. The nearest Blackhair tribe, the free people of this tribe are accustomed to cutting off the ears of the enemy as a medal of victory, and they are extremely vengeful, and they believe that revenge is also a manifestation of bravery. As soon as Cole and his men approached, they were surrounded by a man. The leader loudly questioned Shagger. Shagger, son of Dorf of the Stone Crows, why did you bring people into our territory? The leader was a woman, thin and strong, with a flat chest. She looked like the flat desert of dawn, with dark skin and several scars on her face. Shagger said, Zira, daughter of Zeke, this son of Tywin wants to see you. Zira's eyes showed doubt. When she looked closely, she found that it was a half-man. She couldn't help laughing. Is there no man in the Stone Crows? Shagger was unhappy. When she heard this, the men of the Stone Crows are all the best free warriors. Zira's eyes flashed with disdain. She didn't know how many pairs of ears she had cut off from the Stone Crows. Maybe you can try to see if this half-man is a man. He will make you unable to get out of bed. Tyrion stepped forward. Take your half-man pet and get out of here, Shagger, unless you want to cause a war between the two tribes. Zira said angrily. Shagger will chop off all the vitals of the Blackhair tribe. He fought back fearlessly. The Blackhair tribe's freemen behind Zira yelled and cursed, brandishing their swords and preparing to come up and chop down the Stone Crow tribe's cubs. The Stone Crow tribe was not to be outdone, and they started to curse at them. It seemed that a violent conflict was about to take place. It was really not a wise choice to take a group of barbarians to negotiate. Shagger, don't you want those good things? Tyrion's voice was like thunder, shocking the people of the Stone Crow tribe to shut up obediently. Seeing that the Stone Crow tribe was actually scared by half a man and dared not speak, the people of the Blackhair tribe burst into laughter and made a few sarcastic remarks from time to time. Shagger was so angry that her face flushed. Zira, daughter of Zeke, we are not here to fight with your tribe, but to discuss business. Tyrion said to her. Talk about business. Zira looked contemptuous. Is the half-man going to sell himself to us? Cole draws his sword. Tyrion suddenly shouted. With a swish, two sharp swords were unsheathed. The Blackhair tribe instantly took a defensive posture. Tyrion walked up to Cole and took the Winter Knight. Don't be nervous, we have no ill intentions. He waved at the branch beside him, and the finger-thick branch fell down. Do you see this sword? He handed the sword to Kira. She took it in surprise. The sword was as cold as a blizzard when she touched it. She touched the blade and a layer of dead skin was cut directly. I can give you countless swords like this. Kira's eyes finally showed seriousness. I don't believe the words of half-men. I guarantee it on the reputation of Lannister, and Shagger and his Stone Crow tribe can also guarantee it. Tyrion kicked the big man. Don't you think so? Yes, half-men also have armor and axes. If he lies to us, feed his life to the goats. Kira's eyes were uncertain, as if she was thinking about the pros and cons. She asked, what do you need us to do? Fight for me. I can provide you with weapons and armor. You should have seen the equipment of those Vale cavalry, and my equipment is countless times better than theirs. She seemed to be persuaded. This needs to be decided by the tribe together. You come back with us. Of course. Seeing his confidence, Zira believed it a little more. She glanced at the Stone Crow tribe and asked, why do you still need us? I need a lot of people. Even if all the free people fight for me, I can afford it. Zira nodded. She threw the sword back to Tyrion, and Cole caught it in midair and put it back into the scabbard. Now both swords were held by Cole at his waist. Zira led them into the tribe. As she walked, she said, I can persuade the Moon people to join us. Passers-by looked at them curiously. Several free people who gathered together had different looks in their eyes when they saw Cole and his group. Cole and his group were placed in a large wooden house by Zira. She went to gather the tribe members, leaving her two sons to guard the house. The Blackhair tribe doesn't have any elders. Only the bravest warriors can lead the Blackhair tribe. Zira is now the nominal leader of the Blackhair tribe. Although she is just a woman, she has cut off 42 ears by herself, and her sons have cut off 50 ears. After all, the Blackhair tribe is not a single powerful family. Freemen should respect everyone's opinions when judging major events. Just as Zira went out to call people, 6 or 7 people broke in. Zira's son stopped them, but heard those guys say, Zed, Zeb, are you going to stop Blackhair from taking revenge? Hearing this, Zira's second son looked at each other in bewilderment. Someone pushed them away and rushed in. It's them who killed Camus. He said several names, but Cole didn't remember them, but Cole knew that they were coming with bad intentions. Tyrion was at a loss. What was the Blackhair tribe going to do? Didn't they agree to call people to discuss? But before the little devil could figure it out, the group of Blackhair freemen had already slashed up with weapons. Zira's son was watching from the outside. When the Blackhairs were fighting for revenge, no one could interfere. Cole pulled out Winter Night like lightning and jumped to block Tyrion. The leader fell on his back after being chopped by a cross. He slashed the throat of the Blackhair freeman like a whirlwind. The man covered his neck with both hands and collapsed in fear. Cole's move shocked everyone. The Avengers were frightened for a moment and they moved their feet hesitantly. Bronn took the opportunity to pull out a dagger and pierce one of them through the throat. In an instant, half of their people were gone. P.S. If nothing unexpected happens, it should be updated at 6 AM and 6 PM in the future. Chapter 32 Team Expansion. When Killer led the people back to the big wooden house for the meeting, it was already a mess. The free people of the Blackhair tribe behind her were all surprised, and they obviously didn't understand Killer's intention. 7 free people died here, all of them were from the Blackhair tribe. Someone soon discovered that all the dead were from his own tribe. He looked at Killer angrily and asked loudly, "Killer, why did my people die here?" Killer obviously didn't understand what happened. She looked at Shagger. 4 people were killed by the Stone Crow tribe. They were ordered to protect the half-man, so they would naturally not stand idly by. Shagger pointed at the dead and said, "They want the half-man to die, but the half-man hasn't fulfilled his promise and can't die." It's Shagger, the son of Dofu from the Stone Crow tribe. Someone recognized Shagger. "You brought outsiders into the meeting house. Are you going to betray the Blackhair tribe, Killer?" The leaders of several major tribes criticized the patriarch Killer. Her eyes were filled with dark clouds, and he pointed his gaze at Tyrion. "I need half a man to give me an explanation." Tyrion thought that they were on someone else's territory after all, so he temporarily suppressed his anger. In fact, he didn't understand why these people suddenly attacked them. He tried to be kind and said, "In fact, we don't know either. Maybe you should ask those 2 warriors." The short fingers pointed at the 2 sons of Zira. Zira then remembered that she had sent 2 sons to watch them. She called the 2 sons over and only heard the 2 young children with green faces tell the story one by one. Revenge is somewhat similar to trial by combat in the Blackhair tribe, and it is an act recognized by the tribe. They think that those who dare to challenge the enemy are warriors. It's revenge, so there's nothing to say. Since they are warriors, they will die. It's because they are not as skilled as others. In an instant, the tribal leader stopped talking. Although the guy whose tribe member died was still full of anger in his eyes, he could only swallow his anger secretly. "So you summoned us here, what's the matter, Zira?" asked an old leader of the Blackhair tribe. Zira told them the conditions that Tyrion had said, and the leaders of the tribes began to think about it in their hearts. "I won't let the warriors of my tribe fight for 1.5 people. The leader whose tribesman died was the first to raise a negative opinion. He stepped out after he finished speaking. The great free people didn't need to give anyone a face. Everyone knew that he was dissatisfied with the killing of his people, and he was restrained by not taking revenge. The withdrawal of some people also shook the hearts of these leaders. Even the barbaric free people would understand that opportunities and dangers go hand in hand. At this time, Tyrion said, "I heard that the tribesmen of the mountain clans are the bravest warriors. Are you afraid?" Shagger shouted very appropriately, "The Stone Crow tribe is not afraid. We are the strongest warriors in the mountains." "Bullshit, you Stone Crow tribe are only worthy of being with goats. We, the Blackhair tribe, are the bravest warriors in the mountains." Someone refuted. It seemed that another debate about who was the bravest person was about to begin. Tyrion stopped them. "Since the Blackhairs are not cowards, prove your courage to me. Half a man. If you are not lying, then we are willing to fight for you. If you dare to deceive the Blackhairs, then let you know what the courage of the Blackhairs is," Zira said to him. This time no one questioned the chieftain. After persuading the Blackhairs, Zira led the way and they went to the Moon People. When the Moon People heard that the Blackhairs had joined, they also happily agreed to join the alliance. The 2 tribes have always had a close relationship. It is rumored that the Moon People were a large tribe that split from the Blackhairs. They stayed overnight in the Moon People. That night, a burning man came over after hearing the news. It seemed that the news that Tyrion was recruiting soldiers in the mountains had spread. The chief of the Burning Man was called Red Hand. The people of this tribe would burn parts of their bodies with flames during the coming of age ceremony. The more important the part, the higher the reputation he would gain. Because he gouged out his left eye, Timed, the son of Timed, was chosen as the Red Hand. That's right. This tribe also has title inheritance. It's normal for the father and son to have the same name. When Timed came with a large group of people, the Moon people thought they were coming to attack. As a result, they found out that this group of people had just been to the Black Ears. Tyrion naturally accepted all those who came to surrender. He felt that this might also be an opportunity to prove himself. He was a dwarf, but he was definitely not useless. Tyrion looked at the stars. Sometimes he hated being in such a family that he was regarded as a shame. But he had to thank his identity, because only in such a family could he live to this day and not have to play a clown in the circus. He imagined the expressions of the people in the tribe when they saw that he was not only not dead after being captured, but also brought a huge army. It must be very exciting. Lannister is a big sign. He knows very well that these people are around him just because his surname is Lannister. Tyrion will not naively think that it is his personal charm that has convinced them. People who know how to use their own advantages are smart people. He has a prominent family, so why not use this identity? Which tribe should we go to next? Cole asked while eating the food given to him by the Moon people. Cole didn't know what Tyrion was thinking, but he obviously had his own ideas. It is human nature to rely on the strong, and so is Cole. He doesn't think he is born to be a king or a general. He just needs to follow the big guys, and there will be bread and milk. As a time traveler, he has advantages over people in this world. He knows the changes in the situation next, and knows which people to bet on to get the biggest return. He was originally mediocre in his previous life, so it would be too much to say that he has great ambitions. Let's go to the Painted Dogs. Tyrion and Shagga have already found out the power distribution of the High Mountain clan. He must go to the Painted Dogs. This tribe that once killed the king of Arrynvale is still the strongest force in the High Mountain clan even after thousands of years of beatings. The next ones are the Burning People, the Stone Crows, etc. The Painted Dogs are deep in the Moon Mountains. The next day, they walked a long way up the mountain, through layers of trees, from early morning to dusk, before finally seeing the shadows of the Painted Dog tribe. As expected, this tribe was different from other mountain people. There were stone houses scattered in their villages, and the scale was about the same as that of 2 or 3 Stone Crow tribes. There were dense figures walking among them. Tyrion and his men were discovered as soon as they approached. Chapter 33 Trial of Fire. The Painted Dog tribe, in the book Valley Chronicles by Mr. Annal, has such a record. During the reign of King Rollandor in the valley, the Painted Dog tribe launched a surprise attack on King Rolland I. The defenseless king was pulled off his horse and beaten to death by a stone hammer before he could resist. This King Rolland was the founder of the Eagle's Nest. After they made their intentions known, they were not driven away or stopped. Many houses had fires flickering, and the white smoke was filled with the smell of meat. Occasionally, a few children were running barefoot, and they could see that they all had some burn scars. When the patrol led them to a rock wall. Here, the wall was carved into a house, and there were several fields outside the house, where some fruits and vegetables were planted. There was also a huge stone cave carved next to the stone house. After arriving here, all the Painted Dog tribe members bowed to the stone cave. An old woman lived in the stone house. After hearing the noise, she walked out slowly, and the people of the Painted Dog tribe saluted her one after another. The leader who brought Cole and the others here walked up to the old woman and said something to her. She nodded slightly, and her drooping cheeks looked quite kind. Tyrion guessed in his heart that this old woman should be a figure like the elder of the Painted Dogs. At this time, besides Cole and Bronn, the only free people beside Tyrion were Shagga and Timett who were willing to follow him in. Zira and the others refused to enter the Painted Dogs, as if there was something terrible here. They stayed outside the mountain and waited there. After the leading Painted Dog tribe member returned, the old man returned to the house and took out a torch. What are they doing? Tyrion asked Shagga in confusion. The old fool grinned. The one-eyed Timed also smiled evilly. If the half-man wants to negotiate with the Painted Dogs, He must accept their trial. Trial? The old woman walked towards the cave in trance with a torch. Her steps were slow, and Cole was worried that she would fall at any time. She stopped at the entrance and threw the torch in her hand into the dark cave. The stone cave, which was originally dead silent, suddenly roared, and a red light reflected on Tyrion's face. His mouth opened, so wide that it felt like 2 eggs could fit in it. Tyrion's eyes widened as he watched the raging fire in the stone cave. The flames covered the surface and brought waves of heat. Beads of sweat appeared on his forehead one after another, and an ominous premonition surged in his heart. There was a constant crackling sound in the stone cave, the explosion of stones, and the roar of flames. Shagger dropped the iron axe in his hand and shouted, "I'm Shagger, son of Dalf." He rushed towards the fire cave without reason like a rushing buffalo. The flames roared and swallowed him. A black shadow was seen moving inside the red sky and earth. Tiamat, son of Timed. The one-eyed red hand also jumped in. When they rushed out of the cave with flames all over their bodies and tattered clothes, there were cheers outside the cave. Many people from the Painted Dog tribe put down their food and ran over to watch. Shagger raised a white stone. Under the flames, it seemed as if the light was flowing. He slapped his chest hard and roared loudly. Timed also took out a white stone and was patting the flames on his body. Tyrion swallowed his saliva. He turned his eyes to Cole and Bronn and saw that they were also shocked. He couldn't help but step back a few steps. Suddenly, an iron spear was against his back. It was the warriors of the Painted Dog tribe. "I won't do such a stupid thing like the barbarians," Bronn said bluntly, although he was very confident in his speed. "You are a spineless flatlander." The onlookers of the Painted Dog tribe suddenly started to make a noise. Tyrion tried to explain to the guys with spears behind him, "I just want to talk to your chieftain about something good." The man shook his head. "A spineless person is not worthy of staying in the Painted Dog tribe." "Then I ask to leave." Several spears surrounded them, forcing them to move forward. "You are a spineless flatlander." The noise had not yet stopped. Tyrion's eyes flashed with helplessness. "It seems that our friends from the Painted Dog tribe hope that we can respect their strange customs." He looked at the two again. "So who will go first?" Cole said something in Bronn's ear and stepped forward to pick up Tyrion by the waist. He looked up in surprise and met Cole's determined eyes. His body swayed, and in a trance, the surging waves of fire rushed straight in front of him. Tyrion's heart tightened, and he suddenly closed his eyes and shouted, "Tyrion, son of Tywin." There was a loud bang, which made his ears buzz. When he opened his eyes again, he saw a red world and crackling stones. Cole was as fast as the wind, and the flames behind him rose up in long ripples. Before Tyrion could react, he was thrown out of the cave. The fire snakes of the flames licked his face, licked his buttocks, and burned his hair and clothes. He didn't dare to scream, fearing that the flames would jump into his throat. Puff! He flew out of the flames, and was caught in midair. The man held the dwarf in one hand, and caught a white stone with the other hand. When Bronn put Tyrion down, he was still in shock. He looked into the flame cave, and made a secret decision in his heart. Lannister must pay his debts. Bronn also rushed into the flames, and soon he came out with a white stone. Cole's figure was still missing, and someone made a regretful sound. Shagger's face also flashed with regret. Cole was a warrior he recognized. Bronn shook his head. "I didn't see him in there." Tyrion's face became solemn. Inside the cave, clothes fell off with the flames, and the last strand of hair on his head was burned. Cole touched his red skin, and the flames seemed to be useless to him. A piece of broken stone flew over with a snap, and he dodged it nimbly. He felt that something in the cave was calling him. The flames surrounded Cole very obediently. Although he didn't understand it, he was not surprised when he thought of his identity as a time traveler, the power of strength and the eye of time. At the end of the cave, the flames stopped, surrounding a pile of dry bones. The bones were as black as night, like a huge shadow in the red glow. Facing the entrance of the cave was a huge skull, with a curved and raised forehead and a bloody mouth. Cole quickly realized that this was the remains of a giant dragon. Why would a giant dragon die in a cave in the Moon Mountains? He walked to the side of the dragon bone and gently touched the burning dragon bone. He felt that the texture was very comfortable. In an instant, a silver-haired girl flashed through his mind. He wondered if she had hatched the dragon egg. Thinking of the body of the dragon mother that was invulnerable to fire, Cole couldn't help but wonder if he was also a descendant of the Targaryen family. After all, King Aegon Targaryen IV left his descendants everywhere in Westeros, and he could be called the Westeros version of King Jing of Zhongshan. Maybe he was the great-great-grandson of King Yang. Such thoughts made him laugh. He wanted to climb the royal family, and he was crazy about it. And the one sitting on the Iron Throne now was not a Targaryen. Claiming to be a royal family was tantamount to death. Even if he really had the blood of the dragon family, he didn't know how many times it had been diluted. He didn't even have the characteristics of the Targaryen family. No one would believe it if he said it out loud. P.S. I'm very grateful for the reward from book friend 201907271141142337. Quote, and thank you for the monthly tickets from Reader's Ultimate Sith, Night Court, Godator, Godseye, Starwind Bloodsaint, and Love Your Beauty. I also thank you for your recommendation votes. Thank you. Chapter 34 The King of Fire. Once, twice. He couldn't remember how many times this kid had saved him. Damn, is it really worth saving a dwarf? Dwarfs can't give you anything. When he first met him, he was still a timid boy, shivering in the cold wind, thin and helpless. But he caught his attention because of his good cooking. At that time, Mormont specially asked this boy to be the chef in order to entertain him. The dishes were served very late. He was so hungry that he wanted to curse, but his anger disappeared after taking a bite. Tyrion couldn't remember how long he hadn't eaten his roasted meat. He should have been a cook in the castle who cooked for the nobles, but he insisted on being a knight. Now you are a knight. Don't give up so easily, Cole. I still want my father to confer you a title and grant you a fiefdom. Why are you lying here? Although Tyrion thought he had seen life and death all along the way, his heart was still torn, as if it was torn apart. It had been a long time since he had been so sad for someone. He tried to hold back the tears in his eyes. Now was not the right time for any tears to fall. Tyrion said silently in his heart, I'm a born devil with a heart of stone. This man just wants to cling to the Lannister family. But the more he thought about it, the more he couldn't convince himself. Friend. He laughed tremblingly, trying to cover up the grief in his heart with laughter. But Bronn beside him had seen his red eyes clearly. Men don't shed tears easily. Even if they appear cold because of restraint, they can't really be cold in their hearts. When Tyrion was grieving, there was a commotion and noises, and all eyes were directed at the fire cave. A black shadow was gradually emerging from the flames, and the swaying of the fire waves caused the shadow to swing together. All the free folks stared with their eyes wide open. Was it 10 blinks, or 100 blinks? They didn't have any unit to measure time, but it was a long time anyway. No one could survive under the flames for that long, not even the fire people of the Painted Dog tribe who had been exposed to flames since childhood. Many people rushed into the flames and came out in just a few seconds. The cave was full of white stones. As long as they picked them up, they would be proved to be a free folk with guts and would be welcomed and recognized by the fire people. The figure was getting closer and closer, and his eyes were close to the cave entrance. Tyrion was even sure that it was Cole. Wow, the flames jumped again, and the figure was getting closer and closer to the cave entrance. Everyone held their breath and focused their eyes on the cave. The fire snakes jumped up and down, and finally a figure stepped out of the flaming door. He was naked, and his hair and eyebrows were burned clean. He was holding a huge stone. Cole picked up the stone for some unknown reason. Something in the stone seemed to be calling him, telling him, pick up the stone, or he will regret it. Of course, he did not forget to pick up a white stone. Bronn's eyes swept from top to bottom, and finally stopped at his crotch, smiling meaningfully. Tyrion's heart relaxed, and he also smiled. This kid is really big. He must find a woman for him, after going down the mountain. The old woman who stopped at the entrance of the cave trembled all over when she saw the stone in Cole's hand. She suddenly knelt down, and kept kowtowed to Cole, shouting, Flame King! Flame King! Before Cole and the others could react, all the Painted Dog tribesmen knelt down with the fire sacrifice. In an instant, the voices shouting Fire King came like a tsunami, and people kept coming out of the house and kneeling on the ground. Cole stood there at a loss, with the scorching flames behind him, and only felt a chill in his crotch. The flames seemed to be aroused as well. A roar of blazing flames erupted from the cave, surrounding Cole on both sides, as if to crown him. It seems that they have been conquered. Tyrion came up. Cole handed him the stone, and then stretched out his hand to cover it. As soon as Tyrion took the stone, he bounced it away in an instant, and a large piece of skin on his hand was burned. This damn stone, how can it be so hot? The shouts of the free people became louder and louder. Now only Cole and the other four were standing. The old priest crawled to Cole's side on his knees, and said with tears in his eyes, "Honorable Lord of Fire, you have finally favored your people again." Cole raised his mouth, as if he had a toothache, and he reached out to help the old woman. Tyrion stood beside him, tilted his head and shouted along. The shouts rose and fell, and continued. Even-timed, son of Timed, the Red Hand of the Burning Tribe, knelt down before him and said, "Only those who take the Dragonstone from the flames are worthy of leading the Fire People. You are the real Red Hand, the King of the Fire People." After saying that, he drew out a dagger and cut open his palm. "My king, please accept my blood." He used his other hand to wipe the blood and smear it on his cheek next to the empty eye socket, which was his burned eye. He was born to fight for the Fire King, not just him, but every Fire People is like this. Faith is sometimes really terrible. Timed raised his hand. "Please let Timed, son of Timed, be your sharp blade, Fire King." Cole was not interested in being a Fire King now. He just wanted to find a piece of clothing as soon as possible. Several people from the Painted Dog tribe also stood up, came to Cole, knelt on one knee, took out a blade, and cut open his palm. "Duoki, son of Duoki, Beer of Beer, Harlan, son of Harlan, are willing to be your sharp blade, Flame King." At this time, the fire priest brought a robe and knelt to Cole. "King, please accept the loyalty of the Flame People." He opened and closed his mouth in astonishment and slowly took the robe to cover his body. The Flame People can be traced back to the Age of Light, when the first men still ruled the Vale of Arryn. The Flame King is the belief of the entire Vale of Arryn. It is rumored that the flaming swords in the hands of the Bronze King family and the bronze armor on their bodies were given by the Flame King. However, the Bronze King family has betrayed the first men and they have turned to the gods of the mountain people. The Flame King will pull out the sword of light from the flames and then repel the enemies from the north. This is a legend passed down from generation to generation by the Flame People until about 200 years ago, when the Fire Witch brought a new prophecy. The Fire Witch and her dragon live in the Trial Cave. The Dragonstone was left behind by her. She predicted that, when the ice comes, the reincarnation of the Fire King will come to the Painted Dog tribe again, pick up the Dragonstone, and lead the brave free people to take back their homeland. Every child who grew up in the Painted Dog tribe has seen the Dragonstone. It is quietly placed there, looking very peaceful. Someone once wanted to steal it, but it was burned to ashes by the flames. Countless people who think they are the Fire King have rushed into the Trial Land to bring the Dragonstone out, but only one person has returned alive in hundreds of years. That person is the Red Hand of the Burning Tribe that was separated later. P.S. This chapter was revised overnight, and several versions were written, but in the end I decided to follow the outline. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 35, The 35th Flame Guard. "When is your name day, Cole?" Tyrion asked him, while sitting by the fire. Cole had just come back from a dusty ride. When he put on the red robe, he was already the leader of the People of Fire. There were 3 tribes, the Painted Dogs, the Burning Men, and the Red Smiths. Although the 3 tribes all called themselves the People of Fire, it did not mean that there was no friction between them. The Painted Dogs claimed to be the authentic People of Fire, and looked down on the other 2 separated tribes. The hot-tempered Burning Men would not tolerate them. They had been unhappy with the Painted Dogs for more than a day or two. The Red Smiths had always been caught between the 2 tribes, and were caught in a dilemma. The Painted Dogs had a deep foundation, and had always been the first tribe in the Moon Mountains. The entire tribe had a population of more than 3,000, and nearly 2,000 warriors who could fight. The Burning Men, as a rising star that had only emerged in the past 100 years, had only about 1,000 warriors who could fight, but their notoriety could be said to have frightened every freeman. It could even spread its reputation to the Flatlanders. The Painted Dogs have always been low-key. They have lived in seclusion in the depths of the Moon Mountains for thousands of years. If it weren't for the limited land and the lack of population, they would have sounded the horn of counter-attacking the Eyrie. The Burning People are just the opposite. They are the most active tribe in the Moon Mountains. They have had disputes with most of the mountain clans and tribes, and they can still live well. Cole picked up the meat roasted on the fire and ate it. Although he is the king of fire, his prestige is not enough. People's beliefs also have different levels of importance. Not everyone is a faithful believer. They kneel to Cole more to follow the trend. People are more concerned about themselves, let alone the free people. Name day. It should have passed. Cole took a bite of the meat, and the juice splashed in his mouth. The taste is indescribable. Anyway, the original meat is like that. Tyrion can restrain the free people well through interests. His prestige is even higher than Cole, and he himself doesn't care about the conflicts between those tribes. After all, it's just an employment relationship. Cole is different. Whenever the three tribes under him have a dispute, they will find him first. All day long, there were trivial matters, either fighting over the ownership of a sheep, or fighting after a verbal dispute. Not to mention finding someone to control them. The leaders of the tribes quarreled all day long. Where have we gone? Cole asked. He was overwhelmed by the trivial matters of the three tribes these days. We have left the Moon Mountains. We will see the Flatland tomorrow. Bronn used a branch to fork the charcoal fire. Are you not with your free folk brothers today? Recently, Cole has been staying with Timett and his friends every day. All the tribal leaders have sworn a blood oath to him, and Cole is now controlling the entire tribe through them. It is really not an easy task to lead more than 3,000 fire people warriors. The tribal leaders under him are divided into 3 groups, and they have many opinions. At this time, Cole, who lacks management experience, seems to be stretched to the limit. Cole knows very well that such opportunities are rare. In this world, where chaos is coming, holding a force will give him greater initiative. I asked Timed and the others to go to the tribe to select warriors. Tyrion took a sip of wine, which was brought from the Painted Dogs. Do you really want to be the Flame King? If the war really breaks out, I think it would be much more useful to bring a group of people than one person. Tyrion nodded. But why do you want to select warriors? To resolve their conflicts. Conflicts? Yes, there is a deep grudge between the Painted Dogs and the Burning People. This is a problem that has accumulated over the years. I want to divert their conflicts, or set up a new enemy for them. Smart Tyrion reacted quickly, and clapped his hands and said, free people often cooperate with each other when fighting against the enemy. So the next day, a story like this spread among the Flame People. The Flame King is going to form his own Flame Guard, and only the 300 most courageous Flame People can become true warriors. They will become the Flame King's closest warriors, holding flaming swords, and follow the Flame King to fight in all directions. When the Flame People heard the news, they gathered under a high platform, which was built overnight by Cole's people. Boom, boom, boom. Suddenly, the drums sounded. In fact, they were just simple leather drums wrapped in sheepskins, but they still made the noisy freemen quiet down. Accompanied by the drums, a group of cavalrymen slowly walked down the hill and surrounded a man wearing a blood-red cloak. They rode their horses around the platform, and all the fire people saw the face of the Fire King. He jumped off his horse, his cloak fluttering in the wind. Under the kneeling of more than a dozen tribal leaders, he slowly climbed onto the platform. Fire people. His voice resounded through the sky. When I picked up the stone, the fire priest told me that I was the reincarnation of the Fire King. I don't understand why a stone can lead the brave fire people, just like you don't understand why a boy under 16 can become your king. A bundle of firewood had already been piled up on the platform. Cole took the torch handed over by Timed and threw it into the pile of firewood. With a bang, the flames shot up into the sky. Let the flames give us the answer now. He pulled out a sword and inserted it into the fire. The sword also burned instantly. He held the sword high and walked down. The crowd dispersed and made a passage for him. The flaming sword burned in his hand. The scorching breath forced people to retreat. He walked around the fire people with the sword in his hand. Everyone watched silently. At this moment, they really felt the extraordinary of the Fire King. Cole walked up to the platform again and asked loudly, "God gave me the power to not fear fire, and also gave me the mission to lead the fire people. So, warriors of the free people, are you willing to fight for me?" Fire King Timed was the first to shout. In an instant, the crowd's voices were mighty, like a wave of raging flames. Tyrion watched from a distance. Cole played this scene well. At least his prestige among the fire people would be raised to a higher level. "I will recruit the bravest warriors of the fire people to stand by my side. You will be my sharpest blades, my most trusted brothers, and my companions, when I return to the kingdom of God. Who dares to raise this sword?" He inserted the flaming sword into the fire. Time jumped up instantly, then pulled out the sword, raised it high, and inserted it back into the fire. "Tiamat, son of Tiamat, your bravery is witnessed by the flames." Cole took the dagger and cut his palm, smearing the blood on his face. The first 300 people who drew their swords became the first batch of flame guards. At the same time, Cole also set a rule that, if you want to become a flame guard, you must defeat a current flame guard under the witness of the flames. The flame guard is the enemy he set up, an enemy of all the fire people. As long as he is still the king of fire, he will hang this title high, making it the most resounding honor among the fire people and the goal of all the fire people. After the show, Cole quickly took off the cloak. The red cloak was covered in goat blood and smelled terrible. Sure enough, in the next few days, there were fewer conflicts among the fire people, and they dueled every day. All Cole had to do was sit and watch them wrestle. Chapter 36 Tavern. When Cole defeated the 3 largest warriors of the 3 flame people, his reputation reached its peak. Strength is what warriors admire most. Now the Flame King deserves the title. He has defeated the strongest people in the tribe, and has been recognized by the Flame. What else can be questioned? Just follow him. Tyrion and his team led nearly 5,000 natives this time. The Free People and the Flame People were divided into 2 groups. Cole led his Flame People warriors to walk behind the team to prevent the Vale cavalry from invading from the rear. However, this worry is obviously unnecessary. The lady who manages the Vale now doesn't know how afraid she is. The team is huge and destined to march slowly. The mountain clans are still traveling lightly. Cole rode a pony in the center of the team. On his side were 300 flame guards. These guys are now bruised and swollen. Thinking that they may encounter war after leaving the Vale, Cole ended the selection of the Flame Guard and changed the rules to a competition after the annual harvest feast. Controlling 300 people is much easier than controlling 3,000 people. In addition, he also appointed 10 captains in the Flame Guard, all of whom were the original tribal leaders. Each captain was responsible for managing 30 people, and none of them were warriors from their original tribe. These warriors then managed other Flame Guard warriors in batches. In this way, his pressure was much less. By managing other people, the Flame Guard gained certain rights and a sense of accomplishment. Naturally, he felt different from others and understood the privileges of the Flame Guard, so he supported Cole. Of course, these people were not all good candidates for management, but now they could only push out those with high military power first. After all, the Flame people were essentially barbarians who advocated military power. Timed was a rare talent. He was not as stubborn as other Flame people. This could be seen from the moment he heard that Tyrion had come to him when he was recruiting soldiers. He was cruel enough to himself and even crueler to others, and he was still very young. From the fact that he was the first to surrender to Cole and offer an oath, it can be seen that he was a person who knew how to judge the situation and the situation. His sense of smell could even be compared with Bronn. Speaking of Bronn, here he comes. After Cole became the Fire Lord, he became the Little Devil's Guard. The dwarf seems to have something to ask you. He walked over casually, his eyes full of distraction. At least he looked like this when he was not fighting. For some reason, Cole always felt that Bronn's eyes were always looking down at him. When the two found Tyrion, he saw that he was frowning. "What's wrong?" Cole asked him. "Shagger and the others asked me to provide them with food. We walked too slowly along the way and the food has been consumed." Tyrion patted his empty clothes. "I only have a few silver left on me now. thinking of the report Timed gave him in the morning. It seemed that the food on the Flame People was about to run out. It seems that we have to find a way. The food of the Flame People is not enough. He originally wanted to ask Cole for help, but he was obviously disappointed. This was all because of his father. The villages and taverns within a radius of 10 miles were all ravaged by the Lannister army. They couldn't find any food at all. I dare not bet on what the hungry Free People will do, Tyrion said helplessly. Cole didn't dare to bet on whether the hungry flame folk would recognize him as the Lord of Fire, and the two fell into silence. At this time, a free folk gnawed a chicken leg and walked past them. The two looked at each other in surprise. Free folk don't raise chickens. Is there a village or a hunting forest around? Cole grabbed him and asked him. The boy was not very old and was a patrolman of the free folk. He said very frankly that he caught the chicken from a flatlander's house. He also said that Shagger and his men had taken people to rob things. The free folk were predatory by nature, and Tyrion was the first to think that there might be a village. He hurriedly urged Cole to get on the horse and let the patrolman lead them to stop Shagger. They rode a little earlier. It was indeed a small settlement, but it was an inn. There were sparse figures walking between the stables and the tavern. The innkeeper was a fat man with a bald head. He smiled very kindly. I'm Tyrion Lannister. The little devil was the first to reveal his identity. I wonder if Lord Lannister would like to stay in the inn or? The innkeeper asked. Tyrion threw the purse to him. I want to book this inn. This is the deposit. Prepare your food. I need enough for 5,000 people. 5,000 people. The innkeeper opened his mouth wide, looking embarrassed. Sir, this is too much. We simply don't have so much food. At this time, Shagger appeared in sight with a group of people. Tyrion pointed at them. Did you see my barbarian men? As for the food, you figure it out yourself. You won't be short of money. If they are not satisfied, then it's a fat man who will be put on the table. Tyrion said threateningly. By the way, prepare 2 good rooms for me, and the knight next to me, and 2 jugs of wine and 2 roasted pigeons, fresh cheese. It would be best if some onions were served. Yes, yes, Lord Lannister. The innkeeper was sweating profusely, and beads of sweat were oozing out of his forehead. Recently, the name of Lannister has been regarded as a plague in the Riverlands. Last time, he was spared because he voluntarily received the Lannister soldiers. At this time, Shagger came up with a puzzled look on his face. Why is the half-man here? I'm looking for food for you. Shagger frowned. The half-man wants to steal the prey of the Stone Crows? Tyrion raised his head and looked at him directly. Shagger, you promised to listen to me on the plain. Gold coins are more useful here. Go and call all your people here. We will stay here for the next few days. Thinking of the promise he made to the half-man, Shagger could only nod and lead his people to retreat. Cole also wanted to go back to lead the tribe over. As soon as Tyrion walked into the tavern, several people who were sitting and drinking stood up. Master Tyrion, wearing red and black armor, with a lion-shaped helmet on his head and a red cloak draped over his shoulders, he was a knight from the Lannister family. When Cole arrived with a large number of firemen, the place was already crowded with people, and Cole could only station troops on the periphery. The Free People's camping was nothing more than lighting a fire. Sleeping in the open air was nothing to the Free People. They were not delicate knights. Tyrion quickly found him. There were several armored knights around the boy, and it was obvious that he had found the organization. Cole, it seems we have to go, he said as soon as they met. Led by the knights, they headed towards the King's Road. Chapter 37. Hear me roar. The charred fields, the farmhouses turned to ashes, and a few half-burned wooden boards twisted and swayed in the foundations. A few crows were circling in the air. These damn blackbirds always like to eat carrion. It seems that there has been a fierce battle here, although there are no corpses. The Lannister knights led them through a narrow passage. A mud wall was across the gorge. Watchtowers stood on both sides of the wall. There were sentinels on guard. After the guard saw that they were Lannister knights, they let them pass. After passing through the gorge, a huge camp came into view. The wooden fence surrounded the camp. The outside was a wooden cone standing horizontally. There were spearmen and archers defending. It was obvious that the camp was now ready for battle. Between the tents, cavalry patrolled back and forth, and the flags fluttered in the wind. In addition to prolonged care, there was also time who was inseparable from care. The free folk leaders who were afraid that he would escape, namely Shagga and Zira, also followed. A patrol of cavalry came up to them. The leading knight was wearing silver armor, with a unicorn-shaped pattern inlaid with amethyst on his chest, a purple and silver cape, and a spiral horn on his helmet. The visitor was Sir Fleamont Brax, whose family crest was a purple unicorn with a silver bottom. The Brax family was located in the Westerhorn Valley, and was one of the main vassals of the Lannister family. He obviously recognized Tyrion. "My lord, we thought you were the one." Tyrion exchanged a few words with him, and then went to see his father. Sir Fleamont ordered people to lift the wooden fence and open a passage for them to come in. Lord Tywin was in a tavern. He had requisitioned a tavern at a crossroads as his headquarters. As they walked along, the wildlings and Cole couldn't help but look surprised. There were about 20,000 people in this camp, with dense tents. Soldiers camped in the open air, and the nobles' tents were like palaces. Pedestrians came and went, but they all retreated when they saw the cavalry. Tyrion looked at the numerous familiar flags, and was obviously a little proud. After passing through the camp, they came to a ruin. Most of the houses were burned down, and only the tavern at the intersection was still intact. Obviously, that was the base camp of Lord Tywin. The stables and the inn were nestled together, and the stable boy ran out of the stable to lead the horse. Shagga frightened them away with his bared teeth. Not to mention Shagga's beard and huge physique, he looked really intimidating. The guards in red robes and lion helmets were guarding the door. When they saw Tyrion, they quickly saluted. Tyrion asked Cole and the others to wait at the door, and then he walked in. Shagga held his nose and paced back and forth at the door. He asked Cole, chief of the Painted Dog tribe, "What are half-men doing in there?" Cole pushed him away. The big guy was smelly and his mouth smelled like snail noodles. He should be talking to his father. Free people have the right to participate in any meeting. Shagga suddenly shouted. Apparently, Zira and the others thought the same. They looked at Cole and heard him say, "I'm not a freeman, but I advise you to wait at the door." Apparently, the guys completely ignored his advice. Shagga was about to go in, but was stopped by the Lannister guards. The guy was not allowed to go in, but he just forced his way in. With his physique, he rushed in, and the two guards flew in. "Hear my roar," Tyrion said to Lord Tywin with a smile. Although the father and son don't get along, on the surface, they get along pretty well. This sentence is exactly the motto of the Lannister family, but the world is more familiar with the sentence "a Lannister must pay his debts." There was a sound at the door, and two Lannister lion guards fell to the ground, and Shagga's huge figure squeezed in. He broke the guard's sword and threw it on the ground. The whole person was like a fierce beast. Cole was the last to come in. Sir Kevin Lannister, who had been sitting next to Lord Tywin, suddenly started to fight, his eyes full of anger. He was Tyrion's uncle and Lord Tywin's brother. He was about to open his mouth to scold, but he saw Tyrion walked in front of Shagga. Lord Tywin asked, "Tyrion, who are these people?" His tone was cold and frosty, and there was no emotion. "Father, they are coming home with me," Tyrion explained. "Can they stay? These people can't eat much. Why do they disrupt our meeting?" Sir Kevin was obviously still angry. "Freemen have a natural right to participate in all war meetings," Khan of the Stone Crows said. "Who among you is the chief of the lions?" asked Zira, the leader of the Black Ears. Sir Kevin had already reached out to draw his sword, but Lord Tywin stopped him with his hand. "Tyrion, where are your manners? Why don't you introduce the guests?" Tyrion grinned. "I'd be happy to." He pointed at Shagga and Khan. "This is Khan of the Stone Crows, and this big guy is Shagga, son of Dalf." After introducing the free folk, Tyrion turned to Cole. "As for this handsome boy, he is a famous knight in the Seven Kingdoms, Sir Cole, and the Lord of the Fire People. Not a lord, but the Fire Lord." Timed corrected. "The Fire Lord." Sir Kevin showed disdain on his face. Finally, Bronn was introduced. Lord Tywin was motionless and looked at them. He suddenly stood up, and in an instant, the pressure of the superior came over him. For the first time, Cole knew that momentum really existed. His every move could make people feel pressured. "Even though I'm in the West, I've heard about the heroic deeds of the warriors of the Moon Mountains tribe. So what's the purpose of your coming here?" The half-man promised Shagga armor and axes. Shagga said, At this time, the messenger suddenly came to report, "Your Excellency, Ser Adam asked me to report that Stark's army has moved south." Tywin pondered slightly, his eyes were like ice, and there was a hint of joy in his tone, but his face was still cold. "It seems that the wolf cub has moved." People who are familiar with him know that Lord Tywin never smiles. "Very good, you go and tell Ser Adam to lead the army to retreat. Before the main force arrives, you must not fight the Northerners head on. You can send cavalry to harass the enemy's wings." He ordered the messenger. He continued to make several war deployments, and at this time Tyrion suddenly reminded him, "I heard that the warriors of the tribes are the bravest warriors in the world." "Yes, Shagga will chop down the enemy's second brother and roast him with fire." Shagga roared. Tywin's golden eyes stared at Tyrion coldly. "Fight with me, and I promise that I will fulfill all Tyrion's promises." "Why should we trust you?" Zira asked. "I didn't say you have to trust me. It's enough for you to trust my son." "That's just a polite remark. If you want to leave, please go ahead. But I heard that the enemies from the north are all made of black ice. Even my knights will be terrified when they meet them. If you are afraid." Before he could finish, Shagga shouted, "Free men are not afraid of snowmen. I will cut off their roots." Tymt looked up at Cole, who was calm and composed. The Fire King really wanted to lead them to fight against the enemies from the north. "Chief Lion, we can fight for you, but the half-man must follow us. His life is ours until his promise is fulfilled," Zira said. Tyrion just laughed. "Of course, half of the man is with you." At this time, Cole, who had been silent, suddenly said, "Lord Lannister, if you want us to fight for you, you should let us know your battle deployment. I don't think Stark will fight you head on." The golden eyes were like frost, and Cole looked at him without fear. "Your friend is very interesting, Tyrion." He could tell at a glance that this child was not a mountain man. Chapter 38 Bait. "The Northern army will march south along the King's Road, and we will meet the enemy here." Tyrion was explaining the Lannister battle plan to the barbarians. He gestured on a simple map, and the tribesmen stared at each other. They had originally clamored for a democratic discussion and expressed their opinions, but now they couldn't say a word. The tribesmen's wartime meetings were often about who to fight, who would fight in the front, and how to divide the battle after the battle. That would be as troublesome as the Flatlanders. In fact, Tyrion also knew what kind of people his group was. He was more explaining to Cole. After all, most of them were under the command of the Fire King. "We are responsible for the left wing?" Cole frowned, and his eyebrows had just grown out. Tyrion nodded. "Yes, the mountain is leading his knights with us." Cole pointed to the map. "The Kingdom Road runs down the Green Fork River, with flat land in the west and high land in the east. The flat left wing is obviously more suitable for cavalry charge, but the cavalry of several tribes added up to only more than 600, and they are all short horses that are not suitable for charge." Tyrion didn't know much about military affairs, but he also knew that cavalry charge was more suitable on flat ground. "So which army will Lord Tywin lead?" Cole asked. Tyrion shook his head. "They didn't tell me about the other deployments, except that we were in charge of the left wing." Cole frowned even deeper, and said with certainty, "We are bait." Tyrion fell into deep thought. He knew his father. Cole's guess was exactly what Lord Tywin did. The armor and weapons that Lannister distributed to them were all looted along the way, all old and rotten goods in the warehouses of the nobles in the Riverlands. Tyrion knew it as soon as he saw the emblems on the shields. Dov and the others were ecstatic, and scrambled for them happily. Cole also grabbed a set of armor, a chainmail headguard, and a half-round helmet with a nose guard, which was similar to the Western Norman helmet. Wrapped in chainmail and leather armor, although the defense was not perfect, it was more agile, and Lannister would not be kind enough to leave such precious weapons as plate armor to them. Seeing such a hodgepodge of troops, do you think those veterans of the northern battlefields would not be able to see that this was a mixed army? A mixed army appeared in a favorable position, where the cavalry could charge, and the cavalry of the northern border would inevitably charge forward, unless their commander was an extremely cautious person, and it was obvious that the young Wolf Lord was just a fledgling boy who had not even grown hair. Tywin was also betting that, if the cavalry dispersed the wildling army on the left wing, and turned to cross the battlefield from this side, it would cause immeasurable damage to the Lannister army, and might even make them lose the battle. So he chose a hill as the battlefield. He would lead the 5,000 best Lannisters to station on the high ground. As long as the wildlings collapsed, he would immediately deploy his forces to the left wing and let his 2,500 elite cavalrymen fight them head on. The other 2,500 infantrymen prevented the collapse of the battlefield. If we really want to fight the main force of the north, there will be heavy casualties. Tyrion. Cole looked at him with purple eyes. He didn't care about the life and death of these barbarians, but he felt upset when he thought that he would also go to the battlefield. Dad's behavior was indeed unkind, but it was very Tywin. I will talk to my father. He stood up. Cole's change caught him off guard. The boy who followed him silently without saying a word had changed. This change started when he became the Fire Lord. Of course, it didn't mean that he became arrogant and complacent once he gained power. Tyrion felt that he became more confident, and it could be said that he was more confident. No matter what, Cole saved his life after all, and accompanied him through life and death several times, which was enough. I don't understand what the half-men say, but Shagga helps the half-men fight. After getting the equipment, Shagga was very happy. Tyrion nodded slightly to him. He was going to find his father and ask about this matter. The Stark brats have already stationed troops in the narrow passage, and we are one step late. Sir Kevin Lannister pointed at the map and talked. Lord Tywin always sat there with a cold face and said nothing, watching his men arguing endlessly. At this time, Tyrion just came in. Tyrion, I don't remember summoning you here. Tywin asked in a majestic tone. Tyrion was not afraid of this mighty lion at all. He picked up the wine pot on the table and poured himself a glass of wine. The free people are dissatisfied with you using them as bait. Tywin narrowed his eyes slightly. He didn't tell many people about this matter. He didn't think those wildlings had this ability. Otherwise, I don't know why they have been hiding in the Moon Mountains for so many years. Is that what you mean, Tyrion? No one knows his son better than his father. Even if he dislikes his dwarf son, he knows that he has some cleverness in his head. Yes. Tyrion drank the wine in one gulp. Then you should understand what I mean. You are still a Lannister after all, Tyrion. I will let the mountain protect you. Haha, Tyrion sneered. Why not let this shame of Lannister die honorably on the battlefield? I think my son seems to have some misunderstandings. My lords, today's meeting ends here. I have to have a good talk with him. Tywin stood up. The other knights bowed and left. When Sir Kevin walked past Tyrion, he whispered, "You shouldn't embarrass your father." Tyrion just looked up and glanced back. After everyone had dispersed, Tywin took the flagon and poured out 2 glasses of wine and then handed one to Tyrion. "So what do you want? A fiefdom and a title?" Tyrion took the wine glass with a smile. "For your friend the Fire Lord?" Tyrion smiled but said nothing. It would be better if he could marry a Lannister girl. Tyrion continued. Lord Tywin's eyes flashed with a sharpness. "You should know the 2 biggest shames of my life." Tyrion's smile gradually stopped. How could he not know that one was that he gave birth to a dwarf son like him, and the other was that his sister married the Free family? If your friend wants to get what he wants, let him come here by himself. Lord Tywin said this and walked into the inner room, no longer paying attention to his dwarf son. When Tyrion returned to Cole's erected tent, his face was terribly gloomy. Cole felt that he should not have reached an agreement with his father. Cole comforted him. "You should believe in the warriors of the Free People, Tyrion. Even if we face cavalry, we may not lose. If you don't believe me, ask Shagga." The fool immediately shouted, and he shouted that he wanted to cut off the second brother of the Northerner. Tyrion forced a smile. At this time, Cole said, "I thought about it carefully. In fact, the war situation may not develop as we think." Chapter 39 Big Bait Small Bait. Tyrion, you better give me a good reason. Lord Tywin was obviously annoyed by his son's repeated interruptions. "Well, you said it." He pushed Cole out. "Now the people are here." Tywin sat down at the center of the table. "Really? I heard that you want to marry someone from the Lannister family." Cole's face was full of question marks. "What does this mean?" He looked at Tyrion with a puzzled look. "So what did you say to Lord Tywin?" Ahem. Old man, you'd better listen to Cole's advice first." He turned his golden eyes. "What does this Flame King have to say?" Cole nodded, and he walked to the map. "Lord Lannister, Please look here. He pointed to Riverrun. You can cross the Green Fork directly from here, and then cross the Trident, to reach the heart of the Riverlands. If the Stark cavalry comes from here, they can support Riverrun, or rush to our rear. You mean old Free from Lewin River City will help the Stark boy? He doesn't have the courage. Then please look here. Cole pointed to another place on the map, which was White Harbor. Doubts finally appeared on Lord Tywin's face, but he concealed it well. Cole continued, the ships here can directly reach the Vale of Rin, and messengers from the north can depart from here. As soon as the Bloody Gate is opened, the Vale Knights will rush down and reach our rear. My lord, you should know that the people in charge of the Vale of Rin are relatives of the Stark family. Then the Lannister scouts will report to us. Lord Tywin said unceremoniously. How could he not be on guard against the Vale? If that's what you want to say, then I think you should go down and have a good rest. There will be a fierce battle next, and I have high hopes for you. No, Lord Lannister. Cole shook his head. I know you want to use us as bait to lure out the main force of House Stark, but what I want to say is that the tribesmen, Tyrion, and even the Mountain are just small baits. The real big bait is your eldest son, Sir Jaime. He continued, the Northern army is coming down from the north. Even if they are defeated, they can retreat to the neck and hold on to the Moat Cailin, where we can't take it even with 10 times our strength. And what about the Lannister army? Cole asked back. If any army appears in the south, our retreat will be completely cut off. Whether it is the Stark cavalry, the Vale of Rin cavalry, or even Stannis' army, as long as they support Riverrun, with the help of both inside and outside, Sir Jaime who is besieging the city will surely be defeated. By then, we will be fighting the Northern army, and will not be able to rush to help. Besides, there is a Green Fork River blocking the way. Forgive me, my lord. Sometimes people can't trust their own consciousness too much. Maybe you have felt it in King's Landing 10 years ago. Tyrion couldn't help but sigh in his heart. Oh no. Few people dared to talk about that in front of Tywin. As expected, Lord Tywin's eyes became cold. You said that people from the north would come from Luan City, and that the armies of the Vale of Rin and Stannis would rush to Riverrun to help. How can you be sure? The Vale of Rin has always been on the same line with the north, and Lord Stannis, with his strategic vision, must know where his opponents are. Of course, the latter two were made up by Cole to fool Tywin. One of them just wanted to be a turtle, and the other couldn't even muster many people. The cavalry of the north would definitely cross Luan City. The young Wolf Lord was very bold. Someone told me that in war, all factors should be considered properly and all hidden dangers should be resolved. Otherwise, the victory or defeat can only be left to the gods. This sentence finally made Tywin's eyes fluctuate. How sure are you? 9 points. Cole said confidently, leaving 1 point of uncertainty for the gods. A smile appeared on Tywin Lannister's face, and this smile directly shocked Tyrion. What did he see? His father smiled, as if he had never seen it, since he could remember. Take your people with you. I will let Kevan lead 1,000 cavalrymen to support Riverrun. If there is an attack, you will command, and wait until I lead the troops to help. I will give you the fiefdom, title, and women. Cole was stunned, and so was Tyrion. Father, why don't you let Cole go with me? Tyrion asked. Tywin just glanced at him and said, take your friends down. I still need to rest. When returning to the tent, Cole was still a little confused. He just wanted to remind Tywin to prevent the Free family from defecting to the north and to make his presence felt. Tywin's army will surely win the battle against Rose Bolton, the old Skinner. Cole only needs to perform bravely in this battle, and lead his flame people to fight bravely. Then he will be in Tywin's eyes. Even if he can't stand it, he can still accompany Tyrion to King's Landing. If the young wolf's plan is thwarted, no one will be able to stop the Lannister army. When Tywin returns to King's Landing, he can show his ability and get the Targaryen title. Bronn did the same thing, and Cole is confident that he can do better than him. But are you serious about asking 3,000 people to stop the young wolf? Oh, I forgot. There are also 1,000 cavalrymen of Kevan Lannister. Didn't I surrender to Robb Stark because of his superb military talent, even though he didn't even look at him? But it is undeniable that Robb's ability to lead troops is not as good as that of Duke Tywin, a veteran of the battlefield, let alone Cole, who is leading troops for the first time. Can this task be handed over to someone else? Cole said to Tyrion with a bitter look on his face. He looked puzzled. This is a good opportunity. Following my brother Jaime is much more comfortable than following my father. You just need to tell him that you are my friend, and he will definitely meet you. Don't worry, trust my brother. He is the youngest Kingsguard in history. The youngest Kingsguard is good at holding a sword, but it is hard to say whether he can lead troops to fight. And he will soon become a prisoner of the Stark family like you. Of course, Cole didn't say this. The next day, Sir Kevin came to him with an indignant look on his face. His brother Tywin actually wanted him to follow a barbarian kid, to lead the army to support Reveron, and to hand over the command to this hairless kid. Kevin, a veteran who has fought for many years, was unwilling to accept it, and he was looking for trouble with Cole. Of course, he had quarreled with his brother. Sir Kevin. Cole was about to leave the tent. The old guy propped up his hand and put it on Cole's chest, trying to push him against the wooden fence. Unexpectedly, Cole didn't move, but just looked at him with a half smile. I don't think we have anything to celebrate, sir. Chapter 40 Charge. Tyrion hugged the camp prostitute Bronn had found for him. He had wanted to find one for Cole, but 2 days ago he and his uncle Kevin led troops to Reveron to support his brother. The girl named Chi was sleeping soundly, and Tyrion stared at the top of the tent in a trance. Cole asked for 400 horses, plus his original 600 cavalry, just enough to form a cavalry battalion of 1,000 people. He let the Red Hand of the Burning Tribe, who dug out one of his eyes, lead the rest of the people, to follow the army, to fight against the Northmen. Now Tyrion nominally led 4,000 people, but he knew that these people would not really listen to him. Only the Stone Crows, who were closest to him, could barely obey his orders. Tyrion had a deep understanding of how strong these tribesmen were in causing trouble. They robbed things, killed people, and fought for a little bit of petty profit. Many times, his father warned him that, if he could not restrain these barbarians, he would let the soldiers teach them a lesson. Tyrion knew that his father was just trying to scare him. At that moment, the war was approaching, and Stark's northern army was less than a day away from here. Civil strife was not a good choice. After all, it was the eve of the decisive battle. His father Tywin hosted a banquet for the knights and nobles in his barracks. Tyrion also went, but he was very angry, and had not even had a good meal until now. It was not only Tyrion who was angry, but also Cole. Sir Kevin had a lot of opinions about him, and he sneered all the way. If he hadn't stopped them, the hot-tempered fire people under his command would have killed him long ago. Of course, the knights around him were not vegetarians either. If they fought, he would definitely suffer. Fortunately, they were close to Reveron. As long as they could get the message before the young wolf and his northern knights broke through the Lannister army, and then gather the three armies besieging the city, and put them in a compressed formation, they would definitely be able to hold out for 4 or 5 days. They might even be able to force the cavalry back. After all, there were tens of thousands of troops here. They led the army up the hill, where they could already see Reveron from afar. Seeing the sparks there, shining with the stars in the sky, Sir Kevin couldn't help but taunt. I'm afraid that Stark's wolf cub will be scared to pee his pants when he sees the sparks, and then go back to his castle to ask his nurse for milk. His eyes were fixed on Cole, and his intention to swear at him was obvious. Cole ignored him. Since the old man found that he couldn't beat him, he just wanted to satisfy his desire with his mouth. Sir Kevin, being polite in front of the enemy, is also a kind of grace. His face was red with anger. He was indeed far behind his brother Tywin. At least in terms of facial expression management, this Lannister was not as calm and composed as the Duke. I don't know what you told Tywin, but I will not easily hand over the Lannister knights to a little kid. He threatened fiercely. You have to have confidence in the Duke, sir. Tywin didn't tell him anything, but just asked him to cooperate with this kid. This made Kevin, who had always been Tywin's brother and confidant, feel aggrieved. At this time, he should lead the army to fight against the Northern Army. However, thinking that he was here to cooperate with his nephew to attack Reveron, he felt a little comforted in his heart. Maybe his brother saw that his nephew was not stable enough, so he asked him to come here to take charge of the overall situation. Suddenly, the sparks at the north end of the Red Fork River in the north became irritable. In the eyes of Cole and Sir Kevin, they were like exploding stars, and they were getting more and more intense. Kevin was thinking, could it be that their army was attacking the city at night? But why was it that their own camp was burned? Could it be that they were attacked? How could it be possible? Exclamation mark. It seems that we have to speed up, Lord Kevin, Cole said suddenly. Kevin refused to believe it at this time, but the fact was still in front of him. That is, someone was attacking the Lannister camp. Cole turned his horse's head and gave something to the back, then rode down the hill. Kevin followed closely behind, and a red steel torrent rushed on the wilderness outside Reveron. Cole's cavalry seemed to be in a mess, but their momentum was not weak at all. After all, they were the fierce people of fire. Kevin's eyes were staring straight at the back in front of him, and he kept asking himself in his heart, how did he know? Where did the team that attacked the siege army come from, and who was in charge? He really wanted to stop this damn brat and interrogate him, but the situation now could not wait. When they were only 2 or 3 miles away from Reveron, the boy stopped his horse again, and stopped all his cavalry. He turned around, and said in a very powerful tone, Lord Kevin, this is exactly what Lord Tywin is worried about. At this moment, I will command the entire battlefield. Kevin had nothing to say, and lowered his head silently. Yes. Cole smiled. This place happened to be in the upper reaches of the Tengshi River. The Lannister army camp was stationed along the coast. There was a mountain forest at the north end of the camp. At this time, the camp was in chaos. Jaime divided the Lannister army of tens of thousands into 3 groups. The north end was the camp that was now being killed by the Northern Knights. Reveron was also built on a dangerous place. It was the confluence of 2 rivers. The south side of the city wall was divided into 3 pieces of land by the river like a cake. It was just the right place for Jaime to set up 3 camps. The central camp and the north camp were separated by the Tengshi River. Now the river was full of people and boats. Some people were jumping into the river from the north bank to escape, and some were rushing to support from the south bank. Cole couldn't help shaking his head. The commander of the central camp was also a fool. After the fall of the north, he should have gathered the remaining troops and joined the south camp as soon as possible, instead of supporting the north camp like a headless fly. After all, there was a river between them, and it was not good for cavalry and infantry to fight on the water. Even if they took the trouble to get ashore, what awaited them was only a difficult landing battle. The water was turbulent, and the north camp was also in chaos with fire. The cavalry of the north was killing people. Cole opened the Eye of Time and looked away. There were 3 or 4 times as many cavalry in the north. It would be useless if they just went in head first. Sir Kevin, take a small team to take over the south camp. Don't let them collapse. Cole quickly ordered him. He was about to say something, but he shut up again. After thinking about it, he handed the flag to Cole, then ordered a few men to come and ride away. Duoki, lead your brothers to cut down trees. He whispered a few words in the ear of the flame guard Duoki. Then he quickly drew his sword and shouted behind him, Flame people and Lannister warriors, follow me to charge. More than 1,500 knights followed Cole and rolled down the river, shouting and killing. In the camp full of fire and smoke, someone shouted, reinforcement are coming. Reinforcement are coming. The flag with the roaring lion was shining brightly under the fire, and the fire behind the knights shot up into the sky, like a red sun rising into the night sky. Chapter 41 Battle with Young Wolf Lord. Catelyn stood in the stronghold, surrounded by 30 majestic northern knights. Actually, it is not quite accurate to call them knights. Most of the northerners are descendants of the ancestors, and do not believe in the 7 gods. Naturally, they will not apply holy oil in the church, recite the oath, and become knights. But these soldiers in helmets and armor are no less than any knights. Her son led 6,000 people to attack the Lannister army that was 3 times their size. Robb was just a child under the age of 16. As a mother, how could she not worry? She could only sit and pray silently to the gods, warriors, the Father, and the Virgin Mary. When the sound of horse hooves came from the mountains and forests, she couldn't help but look up. There were grey and white flags, and running dire wolves. Thank the gods, she saw the boy in grey armor in front of the team. He grew a beard, and looked more like a man. His fiery red hair was like flames, flashing in the dark night. Catelyn noticed that they tied a man with hemp rope, with golden hair and armor printed with roaring lions. She naturally recognized this man. It was the damned Kingslayer. Jaime Lannister was carried off his horse, his face still somewhat defiant. The people around him began to clamor to kill the Kingslayer. Catelyn also wanted to kill this blonde devil right now, but now her husband and daughter were still in their hands. Suddenly, there was a commotion at the foot of the mountain, and the scout on watch suddenly reported, "Lord Stark, a cavalry is coming down from the river." In an instant, the eyes of the people who were originally in a joyful atmosphere became solemn. "Can you see how many people there are?" The scout shook his head. "The flames are soaring into the sky, and there are nearly 2,000 vanguards alone." Robb Stark turned around and wanted to get on the horse, and his shawl was raised, but suddenly his arm was pulled by someone, and he turned around and met his mother's eyes. "Robb." Catelyn called her son softly. He pulled his hand away with all his strength, then jumped onto his horse. He ordered the guards who were protecting his mother, "Take my mother back to Luan City and ask Earl Free to open the door." After that, he led a group of cavalrymen to gallop down and kill towards the river valley. Cole's cavalry rushed forward like a sharp sword, and the leader of the northern cavalry also reacted quickly. They quickly gathered several cavalrymen to face the enemy head on. The swords clashed, and Cole waved his sword and killed several oncoming cavalrymen with a few strokes. They roared like a gust of wind, and in a few breaths, they rushed hundreds of meters. Cole didn't know how many people died in his hands, but he just cut down anyone he saw. Often, a handover could determine the outcome. He opened the Eye of Time to avoid several fatal attacks, and the good horse under him was also very powerful. At least one wave of charge passed, and he and the horse were safe. When he looked back, there was already chaos around him, shouting, cursing, and screaming. He was so shocked that his head was dizzy. Is this the battlefield? A man approached with a spear and was kicked over by the horse. Cole pulled the reins and kicked him over. He continued to swing his sword to kill the nearest enemy. The Winter Knight passed in front of a northerner's head, and a head soared into the sky. Cole rushed to the next person as fast as the wind. The Winter Knight was like a ruthless blade of death, constantly reaping the lives of the enemies. The northerners retreated, and a group of cavalry gathered around Cole again. They chased after the enemy and worked together to assassinate the lone person. At this time, a group of well-equipped cavalry came out of the woods. The leader was fully armored, and a grey-black behemoth followed under his horse. The flag was a grey wolf with a white background. They rushed out from the left wing and caught Cole and others off guard. The two groups of cavalry mixed together and instantly became a mess. Cole rode his horse to inspect the circle. There were cavalry surrounding him, and the enemy could not get close for the time being. He discovered the position of the enemy general. The man who brought the direwolf to kill the enemy must be Robb Stark. Because the direwolf was always guarding Robb, the horses did not dare to approach him, so a vacuum was formed around him. Not only horses were afraid of this monster, but people were also afraid of it. As soon as Cole approached, the horse under him did not obey. Robb also discovered him. Cole's armor was not conspicuous, but Robb had just seen that all the Lannister knights were surrounding Cole on both wings. In an instant, the two seemed to have reached a tacit decision to duel. Robb lightly clamped his spurs and came with a sword, with an imposing manner like a wolf attacking the moon. At this time, Cole's horse finally stopped being restless, and Cole also rushed forward with the momentum of a long rainbow. The cold light intersected and shook violently. The two fought back and forth on the warhorse, showing murderous intent. In the light of the fire, Robb finally saw the face under the half-helmet. He felt that this person was very familiar, but he couldn't remember who it was for a while. Cole only said, "Long time no see, Lord Stark." Yes, how could Robb, the busy lord of the city, remember an insignificant cook? Cole waved his two swords and attacked with both hands. Soon Robb fell below. He used Winter Knight to chop off the horse's head, and Robb fell down. Cole rode his horse Yingayu and stepped over, with the huge sword in his hand dripping with blood. Every sound of horse hooves was like the sound of the god of death ringing. Suddenly, a grey shadow covered the moonlight and flew over. Cole's eyes condensed, waiting for you for a long time, loosened the reins, withdrew his feet from the stirrups. Cole leaned back and turned off the horse, leaving the dire wolf named Grey Wind empty. Its hair stood up, and its blood-red eyes flashed fiercely in the moonlight. Cole could see the sharp wolf teeth when he opened his mouth. At this time, Robb also stood up with his sword, and a wolf and a man surrounded Cole from front and back. He spat on the ground, then turned sideways, with a sword on each side, pointing directly at the two enemies. Just enough to kill both wolf cubs. He swung his sword, and slashed quickly towards Robb's side. The young wolf was not to be outdone, and he came forward with his sword. Cole used both swords to slash him, forcing him to step back 2 steps. At this time, the wolves behind him also attacked, and Cole quickly jumped away, placing the two enemies in front of him. Robb patted the direwolf's body, and the wolf jumped into the woods. Cole knew that he had to put the direwolf in the dark. I hope to know who my opponent is. He coughed twice, then asked Cole. Cole, I was fortunate enough to work as a cook in Winterfell for a few days. Cole approached with his sword. As he spoke, Robb seemed to remember something. I didn't expect it was you. Thank you for taking care of me, my lord. Now I fight for Lannister. The sword light slashed down like a crescent moon, and the speed was amazing, but Robb could still handle it. The direwolves rushed out of the forest from time to time, but they didn't pounce on him. This was extremely agile. Cole was also very frightened. Although the fight was only a few moments, he gradually felt exhausted. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 42, Repel the Enemy. One wolf and one man, one in the light, and one in the dark. They cooperated perfectly. The cavalry stabbed past, but Cole turned to avoid it. On the battlefield, you must not only pay attention to the enemy in front of you, but also pay attention to the murderous intentions everywhere. Both of them were amazed at the tenacity of their opponents. Robb was surprised to find that Cole could not be hurt by the joint attack of him and Grey Wind. Cole attacked people and avoided wolves. He slashed at Robb when he found an opportunity. Every time he saw that he was about to catch his flaw, the giant wolf would rush out, forcing Cole to retreat. Seeing that the stalemate was unresolved, Cole kept paying attention to the surrounding noises. Suddenly, his eyes firmly grasped the black shadow in the woods. His figure flashed, and his shawl shook. Robb saw him attacking again, and met him with swords in both hands. Cole slashed down with his left hand. Winter Night. After several exchanges, Robb already knew that his opponent was only good at attacking and not defending. He had to block all his attacks before he could seize the opportunity to launch a defensive counterattack. Robb raised his sword to block, and then Cole swung his sword downwards, using both hands to exert force. Robb leaned sideways to avoid the horizontal blow, holding the sword downwards with both hands, and the blade slid up along Cole's fine steel sword, heading straight for his right arm. At this time, Winter Night quickly changed its course and slashed straight up and down. Robb was shocked and turned his sword back to defend against the enemy, but he didn't have time to defend himself from all directions. In an instant, he made a thought in his mind, holding the sword with one hand to block the sword from below, and with the other hand, he used his wrist guard to meet the sword from above. There was a clang, and the iron and sword collided. He felt the muscles in his arm being cut, and blood seeped out from the guard and the blade. No, the guard didn't hold his sword. Cole pushed hard with both swords, and the wound on Robb's arm was directly pulled open, and even the guard was cut open, allowing him to clearly see his wound. Robb was directly forced back by the huge force, and fell to the ground. At this time, the giant wolf jumped out, and Cole held up his two swords, and swung them fearlessly. It opened its bloody mouth, and flew to Cole's body. It jumped up, and fell like a giant beast, and Cole's two swords were against its claws. Grey Wind was like a giant bear standing up. The man and the wolf began to compete in strength. The behemoth pressed on him, but Cole did not shake at all, like a tough rock. Suddenly, he loosened his two swords and pulled away, and Grey Wind fell directly to the ground. At this time, there was a swish, and Cole pulled out a dagger from his back belt. Robb was staggering to his feet, covering his arm. After seeing the dagger, he shouted, "Grey Wind, be careful." The sound reached the wolf's ears, and it quickly shook its head, but it was still a step too late. With a wail, a dagger pierced the wolf's eyes, and blood gushed out instantly. Its shaking head saved its life, otherwise the dagger would have pierced its neck. The pain did not make the direwolf less ferocious. It bared its teeth and bit forward, but Cole caught its trajectory in an instant, and jumped back to avoid it. Grey Wind, come back. Robb shouted at it. At this time, its face was already covered with blood. Robb looked at the dagger on its eye, and pulled it out with gritted teeth. Cole picked up the sword, met Robb's angry eyes, and adjusted his helmet, that was tilted to one side. He quickly rushed up with the sword. Robb's hand was in so much pain, that he couldn't hold the sword at all. Grey Wind stood in front of him, and his face with blood flowing looked very scary. Now both the man and the wolf were disabled, and they were no longer Cole's opponents. Suddenly, a knight from the north came to kill, and it seemed that someone had noticed that the master was in danger. Cole dodged the swung mace, raised his sword and slashed, and the knight fell off his horse with a plop, and died before he could scream. Robb barely held the sword with his uninjured hand. As he retreated, he pushed and hit Grey Wind to let it go. However, the stubborn direwolf was determined to protect its master, and was not moved at all. The situation was already in Cole's favor. Several more knights came to kill him, but they didn't stop Cole. He was like a bloody killer, constantly approaching the young wolf. Robb knew that the blood belonged to his own people. He had already cut down to northern knights. The direwolf bared its teeth, and growled in a low voice. Grey Wind, go away. Robb was still patting the stubborn wolf cub. Maybe dying on the battlefield is your best destination. Cole looked at the young wolf with trembling arms. The direwolf rushed over again, but because of an injured eye, it completely missed. Cole turned around and faced Robb Stark, who was walking unsteadily. Robb showed a resolute look on his face and slowly raised his sword towards the enemy. Thinking of those who begged for mercy and cried on the battlefield, at least the young wolf had the courage to face life and death. You know, he was only 15 years old. Just when Robb was about to fight to the death, a sudden turn of events came in an instant. A sharp arrow broke through the air and hit Cole's back with a swoosh. He groaned in pain. This stray arrow was indeed beyond his expectation. In the distance, a man holding a bow was pointing an arrow at this direction. He was riding on a horse, fully equipped with armor. Robb could even feel the smile on his face through the armor. Yes, it was the smiling Theon, his brother, the adopted son of Winterfell, Theon Greyjoy. Cole reached back, and the arrow had already pierced deeply into his back. He swung his sword to cut the arrow in half, shaking the wound, and the pain instantly numbed his right arm. At this time, the dire wolf actually pounced on him again, and he was thrown to the ground. Before he could react, the bloody mouth bit directly at Cole's neck. He reached out and grabbed the upper and lower jaws of the dire wolf, but the movement of his right arm made the wound more torn. He couldn't care less now. Death was only a few centimeters away from him. After all, he was immortal. Although his extraordinary ability made him invincible in battle, the arrow almost took his life. Just as Cole was struggling to pull the giant wolf's mouth, a slow footstep approached. Cole glanced over and saw Robb Stark's tall figure slowly approaching. He was walking with a sword, and his arm was already soaked in blood. Cole sighed silently in his heart. He knew what he was about to face. At this time, shouts of killing suddenly came overwhelming, and red flags of roaring lions came from all directions. Robb was startled. Theon rushed to his side with a team of cavalry. He glanced at the person lying on the ground, and couldn't recognize him for a while. Robb, get on the horse quickly, the Lannister reinforcement are coming. Robb pursed his lips, and was helped to get on the horse by several knights. He glanced at Cole, then called back the direwolf, led the cavalry into the mountains and forests, and went to an unknown place. Cole lay on the ground, and coughed a few times, leaving blood on his mouth. He propped himself up, and wanted to see where the reinforcement came from. From a distance, it was the old man Kevin who led people rushing from all directions. The northern cavalry who didn't have time to retreat, were strangled one by one, and Kevin also found Cole sitting on the ground. He walked up to him with a smug look on his face. Stinky boy, if you beg me, I can help you. Cole spat out a mouthful of blood foam. I can get up by myself. Chapter 43 Siege. Use a hot knife to cut the flesh, wipe the blood with a rough cloth, roughly pull out the arrowhead, and then pour strong liquor. This is the most advanced treatment method in the military camp. The sticky herbs were wrapped on his back with satin, and Cole had already sweated all over his forehead. Kevin was worthy of being a veteran on the battlefield. He gathered all the troops and sent cavalry to sweep the enemy around. He was counting his own casualties. In this battle, Lannister suffered heavy losses. After 15,000 troops were defeated, only about 7,000 remained. Of course, the losses were not dead, but most of them ran away. Cole and his men used 2,000 cavalry to attack the 6,000 cavalry in the north. The losses were not small, and half of the men were directly reduced. Cole's own people suffered the most losses. Now there are only about 400 flame people around him. War is so cruel. In fact, since people kept supporting Robb Stark, Cole knew that the situation on his side was not optimistic. If Sir Kevin hadn't sent an army to help, their fake reinforcement would probably have been exposed. Although Stark had retreated, bad news followed one after another, such as Sir Jaime Lannister was still captured by the enemy. Kevin had sent a messenger to tell his brother Tywin, and he could imagine Tywin's anger when he learned the news. When the messenger arrived at Tywin's camp, it looked like a post-war situation. Looking at the fluttering roaring lion flag, it goes without saying that Lannister won. Winning on both fronts should have been worth rejoicing, but when the news of Jaime Lannister's arrest was delivered to Tywin, all the joy instantly condensed to the bottom of the valley. Some people suggested continuing to pursue the victory and attack Gins. Some people also suggested joining forces to attack Reveron, and some even suggested retreating to negotiate peace. Only Duke Tywin said nothing. His face was terribly gloomy. After all, everyone knew that Jaime was his most valued heir. Now that the heir was in the hands of the enemy, how could he be in a good mood? He did not give a conclusion, but asked everyone to retreat first, leaving only Tyrion. Tyrion's wildling army did give Tywin an unexpected surprise. The enemy had only a small group of cavalry and could not break through the wildling army. Instead, they were killed by the wildlings and fled everywhere. Your wildling army and that little friend really surprised me. Tywin poured him a glass of wine. You should be disappointed that your dwarf son did not die in the battle. He took a sip of wine. Tywin handed over a letter. This is a letter from your sister. Tyrion opened it and was shocked in an instant. What? They actually let Eddard Stark escape. The more he read, the weirder Tyrion's face became. Removed the honorary captain of the Kingsguard, Ser Barristan, and let Janis Slynt enter the royal meeting. So what stupid things did Sister Cersei do? 7 layers of hell. What are she and her stupid son doing? Tyrion couldn't help cursing. They fought bloody battles in the front, but King's Landing was made a mess by them. Now even the biggest bargaining chip Eddard Stark has escaped. Apparently Tywin agreed with his words. I'm going to send you to King's Landing. Go to King's Landing? What should I do there? Take care of your nephew on my behalf. At the end of the letter, Cersei asked them to lead the army to support King's Landing in the name of the king. Stannis Baratheon, the Duke of Dragonstone in the south, had already expressed his rebellion, while Renly Baratheon of Storm's End directly proclaimed himself king, and even gained the support of the Tyrell family. You know I've never been liked by my sister Cersei. I'm afraid she won't listen to me. Then take your barbarians with you, and take care of them in the city. At the same time, you can manage those important officials who are jumping around on my behalf. I think Joff can do so many stupid things, and they must have contributed to it. Cersei can't control that brat, so you go and take care of him. Tyrion stopped. I'm not even a knight. When you arrive in King's Landing, you will be the hand of the king, until I come to the capital. Tyrion's mouth was open in surprise, and he didn't know what to say for a while. In the end, he just asked, why send me instead of my uncle, or? Tywin looked at him with his golden eyes without a trace of ripples, and said, because you are my son. All the words were swallowed by Tyrion. Can I take Cole with me? Kevin thinks highly of that kid. He will help continue the attack on Reveron. Tyrion was disappointed, but then he thought that Cole was in the eyes of his father and uncle, which was not a bad thing. At least after the war, he will surely gain a lot of money and be rewarded with a title and fiefdom. Originally, he wanted Cole to replace the Hound who was about to join the Kingsguard in the letter, or to command the capital garrison. The arrow wound, made Cole's movement inconvenient, and no matter how good his physique was, he could not heal quickly. Now the Lannister army is stationed on the south bank of the Red Fork River, with its back to the river road. Seeing that the Lannisters only built a wall, Reverin often sent cavalry to invade their camp. The old man, Sir Kevan, did not make things difficult for Cole now. Instead, he gave him the command of the cavalry and asked Cole to lead the troops to chase the guerrillas of Reverin everywhere. The noble knights assigned to Cole did not care about him much, and a wild knight wanted to stand above them. Cole did not care about them either, but only asked for 400 sets of full body armor, prepared them for his own flame people, and then sent them out for patrol. They camped under Reverin for a few days. On this day, Sir Kevan sent someone to call him. As soon as he entered the tent, he saw him sitting in the main seat, with rows of westerly nobles and knights on both sides. Seeing Cole coming in, Kevan directly asked him to sit on his side. At this moment, Cole felt that this old guy was not so annoying. But all the westerly nobles were muttering in their hearts, "Who is this person? Why is he sitting on the side of the commander?" When Cole took his seat, Kevan took out a letter with a roaring lion's emblem wax seal on it. He spread the letter and read, "Westerly generals, listen to my orders. The war is urgent. I, Tywin Lannister, the Guardian of the West, the Duke of Casterly Rock, and the Shield of Lannister Harbor, order you to continue to attack Reverin with Sir Kevan Lannister as the commander." After hearing the military order, the nobles looked at each other in surprise. Did they mean that they had to continue to besiege Reverin? Is it just them? Then the meeting became chaotic, with countless opinions. Cole said nothing. After the meeting, he walked out of the tent. Suddenly, he stumbled a few steps and felt a little dizzy. He shook his head and didn't care. Suddenly, someone called him from behind. "Sir Cole, the commander asks you to stay for a while." Cole paused for a moment and stood outside the barracks waiting. Chapter 44 Dream. When all the people had left, Sir Kevan called him into the tent. "Please take a seat." Kevan reached between the chairs on one side. "Tywin praised you highly. He asked me to lead the army, so I wanted to ask for your advice." Kevan looked at the young man with short white hair. He didn't know why this kid had white hair at such a young age. Cole didn't pay much attention to his hair. After all, it didn't grow much, and he had been wearing a helmet recently. "I think Lord Tywin's intention is not for us to capture Reverin, but to tie up the Tully family's army, so that they and the Stark army can't gather to cause chaos behind us, and ensure the normal operation of our supply lines." He expressed his guess. Kevan nodded in approval. The more he looked at the child, the more he felt that he was like Tywin when he was young. Of course, it wasn't his appearance, but his demeanor. "So what you mean, we should just besiege but not attack?" "We can't attack. Most of our siege equipment has been destroyed, and our number has been reduced by half. We can't divide our troops to besiege. Now we can't even trap Tully's army. Maybe one day they will suddenly attack from other gates." Kevan fell into deep thought. His personality was not like his brother Tywin at all. It took him a long time to understand what his brother meant. And now Cole said it clearly. Tywin must continue to put pressure on the north. They have won 2 battles and their morale is high. In order to gain more initiative in the next negotiations, he must not retreat. Now they only have Sansa Stark as a bargaining chip. "Can't we take Reverin?" Kevan suddenly sighed. He has been a deputy to his brother Tywin all his life, and even the leading of the army in battle was handed over to his son Jaime. "Don't I remember that Edmure Tully of Reverin is in our hands? What if we use him to persuade the defenders of Reverin to surrender?" Cole thought of how Jaime took over Reverin. Those people took advantage of the chaos to rescue him, and now Edmure Tully is the one in charge in Reverin. Both of them fell silent. It seemed that they won the battle, but in the end they gained nothing. Instead, a large number of important personnel were captured. Although they also had prisoners, they were definitely not equal to those in the north. Only if one of the 2 Lannister armies made progress could they break the deadlock. It was definitely not easy for Tywin Lannister to lead the army north. Cole himself had a deep understanding of the danger of the neck, not to mention the gorge moat Kaelin. I think with Tywin's wisdom, he would not rush in head first, and he should find ways to lure the enemy out for a decisive battle. The army of the north did not completely collapse, and the 2 armies were bound to fight a protracted war. As for a Veron, it goes without saying that they can attack the city. There are at least nearly 1,000 people in the city. Although Cole and his men outnumber the enemy several times, it is unlikely to capture such a dangerous city by force, and the uncertainty is too great. If these are all soldiers who have fought 100 battles with united will, it would be fine, but most of them are just farmers and horsemen who are temporarily recruited. They are fine in a favorable battle, but if the war is stalemate or passive, don't expect them to fight to the death. Of course, this problem is also for both sides, and the defenders will not feel good. Cole stared at the map in a daze, and suddenly thought of something. The guards outside the main tent only knew that the Sir Cole left the main tent very late that day, and he coughed a few times after he went out. Cole's tent was located in the center of the Flame Clan camp. When Cole brought them the full set of armor and horse armor, these Flame Clan completely obeyed him. They were sure that this person could bring them benefits, and then Cole could firmly sit on the position of the Flame King. But the barbarian's character was eventually formed into a habit. The camp was in chaos. Fortunately, Cole's tent was relatively quiet. The surrounding fire people saluted him, and he nodded in response. Now he just wanted to have a good sleep. He lay on the blanket tiredly, and felt that his eyelids could hardly lift up. As soon as he fell down, he fell into a deep sleep. Where is this? He looked up, and saw layers of buildings standing. After a careful look, he realized that this was the world of his previous life, but hadn't he traveled through it? He walked around, and a little bit of memories began to flow into his mind. It was just a year, and he couldn't even remember how to get home. Was that world a dream of its own? Cole suddenly heard a girl crying. He followed the sound and a huge mirror stood in front of him. As if the image was projected from a virtual screen, he vaguely saw a girl crying in despair, and countless pairs of dark hands pulled around her. Cole suddenly felt sad, and for some reason he was also sad for this girl. A thread of blood actually flowed out of the girl's body. Cole could clearly see the blood drops floating between the threads. The blood thread was actually tied directly to his body. Suddenly, a black shadow emerged from the mirror and turned into black wings that covered the sky. Drogo opened his eyes in confusion. He saw his moon Dany, who was pregnant. She was the horse riding the world in the Calamuncals predicted by the Dosh Khaleen prophet. His face was pale without any blood, and his lips were dark purple. He dreamed that the horse came from the sky. Drogo rode on the horse's back. It took him across the Dothraki Sea, across the city-state of the Milkmen, and across the Black Sea. He saw the throne and a pair of eyes burning with flames. He was the most powerful Khal Drogo of the Dothraki. He would ride a wooden horse and cross the black salt water to get the iron chair for his son, the horse riding the world, Rhaegar. He would take his own Khalazar to conquer the world across the sea. Suddenly, his almond-shaped eyes widened, blood rushed to his eyes and face, and the bells in his hair clanged. Drogo touched the wound on his chest that had been festering. It had healed overnight, and his body seemed to become lighter. When he walked out of the straw tent, his eyes were bright. The slaves had already gotten up early and were busy. His brothers and blood guards also gathered around him. Seeing that Drogo was in good condition, they all showed joy. Recently, there were rumors among the knights that Khal Drogo was about to die, so they began to make a move. Khal is the Horse King, and the knights are equivalent to the vassals of the Horse King. Because the new Horse King will be born from among them, but this will be a bloody competition. When Khal rode his horse majestically through the various caste small tribes under the big tribe Khalasar, all the rumors were broken, and he would continue to travel west with the Khalasar. When the wild horses gallop across the continent of Essos, everyone will tremble in their hearts and cry. Their children will become slaves and their women will become playthings under the crotches of wild horses. Chapter 45 Moon. Cole's back was soaked with sweat, and beads of sweat rolled down his forehead. He sat up in shock, only to feel a wet area behind him. All night long, all kinds of bizarre things flashed through his dreams. His right back hurt, as if it was cut by a knife, and the pain rose and fell in waves. He reached out and touched the cloth strip that was already soaked with sweat. After untying the cloth strip, it was blood red, and there was thick yellow pus between the blood stains. In an instant, Cole's face turned terribly pale, and fear continued to spread in his heart, and the wound became inflamed. Cole wanted to find a monk, but at this time, Kevin sent someone to call him. After thinking about it, he followed the guards to see Kevin first. This Lannister didn't look very mentally well today. He just learned that his son had also been captured by the Northerners. Seeing Cole's pale face, Kevin still asked with concern, "You look a little bad, Sir Cole." Cole could only force out a pale smile, and his voice was a little hoarse. "I didn't sleep well." Kevin stood up and poured him a glass of wine, then spread out the map. "How many people do you think are needed at each gate?" Cole looked at the defense of Riverrun on the map, which was very simple and not even accurate enough. This was just the scout's observation from the high ground with the naked eye. They will definitely gather together. Our division of troops is just a strategy to lure the enemy. The elite must be put together. I dare not bet on which gate they will come out from, but it must be our weak point. Cole thought for a while, and suddenly said, "Maybe we can pretend to have some flaws, and it's better to sacrifice some people." Kevin frowned slightly, but instantly thought of his brother Tywin, so he nodded gently. The two continued to discuss the details. It was already noon when they finished, and Kevin wanted to keep him for dinner, but Cole was still thinking about looking for the monks. After the monk cleaned his wound, he looked at his back and sighed. The wound has not healed. Only flame therapy can be used. The monk thought about it and said so. Flame therapy, will flames work on him? Cole shook his head. "Please use strong liquor to clean my wound again, Brother Rolly. I have to clean the concentrated water first." The monk said to him. "Of course, please use hot water to clean it." The monk nodded. Cole had already sent a servant to boil water. This kid was sent to him by Kevin. When the wound was cleaned, Cole's face was already pale and looked like a living person. The monk said that the wound was festering, so he used a knife to clean some rotten meat. After Cole cleaned the wound, the servant Munda brought in some boiled pig blood. At this time, Cole ordered him to do it. He slept in the tent for a whole afternoon. When he opened his eyes in the evening, his condition had recovered a lot. He only felt that his back was not so painful. He walked out of the tent and asked the servant Munda to call a few captains of the Flame Guard. Duoki was wearing a set of northern armor, which Cole asked him to get. Duoki was known as the first warrior of the Painted Dog tribe. He had good fighting ability and a kind personality. He would do whatever Cole said. He did not fight or grab during the plundering and was very popular in the Painted Dog tribe. "Has anyone observed the moon?" Cole asked a question that made no sense. Several captains of the Flame Guard shook their heads. Who would observe the moon for no reason? At this time, one of them suddenly thought of something. "King, there is a boy in our tribe who should know something about the moon. He always says that there is countless golden beautiful women on the moon." Cole asked him to call him. Next to a bonfire, Cole asked Munda to roast half a piglet, and at the same time, took some wine to share with several captains of the guards. "The next battle will be the most crucial one for us to fight against the northern enemy. Have you collected the armor and flags?" "Duoki, don't worry, my king. The brothers in the tribe are all wearing the clothes of the northerners now." At this time, the man who talked about the moon was finally brought in. He was very thin and wore a suit of armor with the emblem of the north. He might be a nobleman. The armor looked a little big. Cole asked him directly which day the moonlight was better. This kid talked about the moon endlessly. Cole was not interested in listening to his remarks and legends about the moon, but he kept him by his side. In the next few days, the injury got better a lot. The wound had been sutured. According to the monk who treated him, the wound was just a little black. Cole touched it, and it was still a little painful, but it didn't affect his activities much. Cole had to do many things himself, because the things he was responsible for were of great importance. Kevin also assigned the most elite warriors around him to him. The knight leading the army was ordered to obey Cole's command by Kevin. Kevin was annoyed by the nobles' dissatisfaction with Cole these days. In fact, he himself looked down on Cole's background. A wild knight who called himself the king of barbarians was just a joke, but Kevin was not stupid enough to ignore a person's ability. This kid was a talent. At least through the aristocratic education of the Lannister family, he could distinguish between those who were fools and those who were truly talented. Moreover, what they were going to do was Cole's idea. He was constantly calculating in his mind. To be honest, he admired this kid's brain. He dared to take risks and analyzed it thoroughly. He felt that this matter was definitely more than 70% sure, and even if it didn't work, it would not affect them much. He vaguely remembered that night. The young man smiled when he heard that the person in charge in the city was Edgemure Tully. Then he vowed, if Edgemure Tully is in charge in the city, then the gods are on our side. He still remembered that smile clearly. I hope your guess is correct. The morning sun of the next day pierced the earth like a golden spear. The soldiers of Reveron who had been guarding the castle all night were preparing to change shifts. Suddenly, the garrison under the castle began to get restless, and someone quickly reported to the inner city. Edgemure Tully quickly led a group of river nobles to climb up the tower, and sure enough, the crowd below was moving slowly. Someone asked, what are they doing? In one morning, the Lannister army was divided into 3 groups. The people of Reveron finally realized that they were going to divide the troops to besiege the city. Someone couldn't help laughing. Look at these idiots from the Lannister family. They dare to divide the troops. They dare to divide the troops with such a small number of people, which is really stupid. I think we should take the opportunity to send troops and teach them a lesson. Someone suggested. Edgemure shook his head. Since he was captured by the Lannisters, he was scared to death and even refused to send the cavalry to attack. The knights in the city had already had opinions about him, thinking that he was too cowardly and unworthy of leading the army. But now Hoster Tully, the Duke of Reveron, is unconscious again. He is too old to walk up to the city wall to lead the army into battle. Until the 3 enemy armies have set up camp, they still just stare blankly on the castle. Cole is feeding ravens. He did this a lot when he was at the wall. He caught one, then took out an arrow, stabbed the raven with the tip of the arrow, and then tied a letter with a wax seal of the wolf onto it, and let it fly. These days he has been observing the moonlight with the man who talked about the moon. This man's observation of the moon is indeed quite good. After all, it is not the earth, and Cole dare not apply the earth's method. However, after a few days of observation, he has also grasped some rules. He came to an accurate conclusion. The waning moon of the day after tomorrow. Chapter 46 Reinforcement. Do you know what they called me? Edgemure complained angrily to the butler beside him. Frightened Edgemure. What do they know? We only have 1,300 people. If we send all the people out, who will defend the city? Master Edgemure. The Maester came over with 2 injured ravens in his hands. These are 2 ravens flying from the north. Hearing that it was from the north, Edgemure was overjoyed. He had seen with his own eyes that his nephew had descended from the sky with his army and almost defeated the Lannisters. Is it my nephew Rob? He took the letter and found that it was indeed sealed with direwolf wax. So he opened the letter excitedly and then couldn't help laughing. Those stupid Lannisters actually dared to divide their troops. He turned to the butler and ordered, call all the knights in the city to the hall and say that Lord Edgemure summoned them to discuss important matters. When all the river nobles gathered in the hall, they were terribly silent. After all, the current situation was not optimistic. Edgemure walked into the high chair of the lord's seat with a happy face, and the lords just thought that he was sleeping with the maid of some castle again. Unexpectedly, he took out a letter with a proud look on his face. The emblem of the direwolf was on it, and everyone naturally recognized it. He just said loudly, the brave raven brought us good news. Someone secretly sent in his heart, black wings bring black news. 2 days later, my nephew Robb Stark will lead the Northern Cavalry to attack the Lannister camp again. I know some people secretly call me Cowardly Edgemure, but the day after tomorrow I will personally lead the warriors of Reveron to go out to meet the enemy, and I will personally cut off Jaime Lannister's head. He said loudly and angrily. Was that letter written by the cunning Lannister? Someone questioned. I recognize my nephew's handwriting, Earl Janis, he said to the man very confidently. In fact, he had not even seen his nephew a few times, but he still recognized the arrow wound on the raven. And whether it was a conspiracy would naturally be revealed on that day. They were high above and could see the situation under the city clearly. Edgemure was actively preparing for the next 2 days. He ordered his soldiers to train and practiced every day. He must show his bravery in this battle, so that they would never call him Cowardly Edgemure again. And his nephew Robb was leading his army across Luan City at this moment. They were defeated and deceived. There was no Lannister reinforcement at all, just a cavalry that came from nowhere. When Robb reacted and prepared to counterattack, Lannister had gathered all the people and erected spikes, giving them no chance to attack. He could only fight back in dissatisfaction. The Northern army led by Rose Bolton was also defeated by Tywin Lannister. It was heard that Tywin had led his army north and was about to approach Luan City. Old Elfrey wrote a letter urging him to lead the army to stop Tywin's army. When entering Luan City, Elfrey's face was indeed not very good. He assured Old Free that he would lead his army to defend the gorge of Luan City and prevent Tywin's army from advancing northward. This made the old earl's face look better. Then the old guy urged Robb to marry his daughter. Robb could only postpone it with the excuse of their original contract. After all, the original promise was to marry his daughter after the war. The main force of the Northern army is still there. Now the situation is not so one-sided to Lannister. They have the backs of Jins and Moat Cailin, and they don't have to worry about having no way out. Moreover, important figures such as Jaime Lannister, William Lannister, and Tyne Free are still in their hands. 2 days later, Kevin was staring at the sky nervously as it gradually darkened. At this time, there was a drizzle in the sky, and there were bursts of fog rising from the water. Today's weather was extremely gloomy and depressing. The guard stood outside the tent listlessly. He set up his flag on the north camp, and now he was using the flag of a noble under him. Kevin led the army in the south camp. Cole swore to him that there would be no moonlight tonight. He was still skeptical at first, but now he believed it 8 points when he saw the river shrouded in fog. At the same time, he was also wondering where Tyrion found this monster. How could he even predict the weather? When the night wind blew, Cole couldn't help coughing. He led 1,000 cavalrymen, dressed like a Stark, and hiding in the mountains and forests, and the Lannister barracks were at the bottom of the valley. Those people didn't know about this play, and Cole didn't intend to let them know. As bait, they didn't need to know too much. At this moment, Cole felt that he was a heart of stone, but in order to make the play more realistic, he had to sacrifice something. Ahem, he couldn't help but cover his lips tightly and felt his hands sticky. The armor on his body also became very heavy. Edmure was standing on the city wall and looking around, but he couldn't see anything below except a piece of fire. He was thinking in his heart, is it really a conspiracy of Lannister? Impossible. How could the Lannisters know that today was a foggy day without a moon, unless they were gods descending from the earth? In fact, Cole could not have imagined a foggy day. He could only know through speculation that there was a high probability that today was a very waning moon, which was almost equivalent to no moon. My lord, the lights on the north bank of the Tengshi River seem to be in chaos. Edmure's eyebrows fluttered. Here it comes, as expected. There were only faint shouts and screams from the other side, and then the fire became huge, and they could finally see the dancing Direwolf flag on the wall. Quickly gather people. Edmure hurriedly ordered those around him. The Knights of Reveron gathered under the wall in an instant. They had been preparing for this moment for a long time. Edmure simply said a few words to them to encourage them, and then asked them to open the iron gate, lift the bolt of the bronze wooden door, and slowly lower the drawbridge. Boom. When the drawbridge crashed heavily on the bank of the moat, he led a large group of cavalry to charge out and directly into the Lannister camp. Sure enough, those Lannister soldiers fled in panic and were easily killed by them like cutting leeks. Seeing the expressions of those Lannister soldiers, some knights gradually put down their worries. It seemed that they were really reinforcement from the north. Cole looked from the hilltop. He did not go down. At this time, his entire right arm was numb, and he could not hold the sword at all. He could only stand on the top with a grim face and command, and there were several Lannister knights guarding him. At this time, if you look from the wall, although the lights in the Lannister South camp and the Central camp are still on, there are already few people. Edmure was in a killing mood. After seeing the armor and flags of the North, he completely let go of himself and led the cavalry to chase the remnants of Lannister. A fallen northern cavalryman happened to pass by, and he asked hurriedly, "Where is your Lord Stark?" The man was stunned for a moment, and suddenly pointed to a hill. Edmure looked and saw that there was indeed a small group of cavalry there, so he led his guards and ran towards the hill happily. Chapter 47, The Fall of the City. Cole stood on a high hill, watching the cavalry of Reveron being surrounded. Behind them, Ser Kevin was rushing with soldiers from the South camp and the Central camp. Suddenly, a group of cavalry with silver trout flags came towards them from below. It looked like there were more than a dozen of them. At this time, there were only 5 cavalrymen on the hill, including Cole, which was only a small half of the number of the people coming. Prepare for battle. Cole ordered his subordinates. Edmure rushed to the hill excitedly. He originally thought that he would encounter wolf flags and cavalry. When he came up, he found that they were a few people of different ages. The leader was indeed very young, with no beard on his face. There was no need to guess that he must be his nephew Robb Stark. He was about to greet them, but the 5 people held lances and swords and charged towards them fearlessly. "Robb, it's me, I'm your uncle Edmure." He quickly stated his identity. Unexpectedly, Robb seemed to be deaf, as if he couldn't hear what he said. It was not until their murderous intent was fully revealed and the blades of their own cavalry clashed that Edmure realized that this TN was not Robb at all. The young knight was swinging a big sword in one hand, cutting down Edmure's guards and approaching him. He quickly pulled the reins and prepared to retreat. At this time, the knight next to him quickly grabbed his horse rope and whispered in his ear, "Edmure, there are only 5 enemies." Only then did he react. Yes, there were only 5 of them. So the brave Edmure raised his sword. After a fight, 4 of their people fell, and 1 of the enemies also fell. Of course, this was just a sneak attack. Now with 9 against 4, the Tully family has the upper hand. Edmure Tully led his guards to fight with the enemy leader. The young boy was alone, and his hand holding the horse rope was still shaking. He wanted to take the man's head personally. The knight next to him took the lead, but was killed by the enemy's big sword. Edmure and another knight swung their swords at him. He didn't believe that this guy could beat the 2 of them. Until Edmure was knocked unconscious by the sword, he couldn't understand how this guy, who looked not as strong as him, could have so much strength. After Edmure fell, the other river knights prepared to come to rescue him. At this time, the remaining 2 Lannister knights also approached him. 3 against 6, the enemy surrounded Cole and his 3 men from both sides. Cole's right arm was completely powerless, and it was extremely difficult to pull the reins, so he couldn't use both hands to hold the sword to resist the enemy. Weapons were used from all directions, and Cole's armor was attacked in several places. At this time, the advantage of heavy armor came out. 1 Lannister knight was stabbed off the horse by a spear, and another was stabbed to death on the horse. The enemy was not hurt at all, and the situation suddenly changed. Cole seemed to be trapped in a dead end. At this time, swords and spears attacked from all directions. In an instant, the sky and the earth stopped. The slowly falling drizzle was like water drops dotting the transparent canvas of space. Those who were killing the enemy with sharp weapons, those who were fleeing, those who were wailing, and those who were angry, all had different expressions. At this moment, all the expressions were like paintings on their faces. Cole had no time to care about anything else. He tried his best to observe every sword and knife that came to kill. There were 2 spears and a long sword in front of him, and there was also a mace as far as his eyes could see. The blade of the spear pointed at himself and the warhorse, while the sword and mace were all attacking him. Cole knew that there was another sharp sword behind him, but it was completely out of his sight. Now he had to be prepared for the horse to be stabbed or injured and scared. It was best to avoid the straight trajectory of the spear, but the wide range of the waving mace and long sword almost blocked Cole's life. But he had time. He could carefully look for loopholes. The river knights saw him ducking to one side and dodging all their attacks. The warhorse was pierced by a spear and let out a cry, then ran wildly in one direction. 2 swords were drawn from the horse's back, facing the necks of the 2 knights, and the sound of cutting through the wind whizzed, and the 2 knights fell down. Cole felt that the scapula connecting his right back to his arm was almost broken, and the heat flowed between his clothes and armor. He didn't know whether it was blood or hot sweat. The horse ran uncontrollably into the woods, and suddenly a branch came across in front of him. Cole's head, which had just been raised, ducked down again. The only 4 remaining river knights were shocked by this scene for a moment, and then 3 of them rode their horses to chase him, and 1 went down to inspect the young master Edmure. When the enemy arrived, Cole was much more calm in dealing with the 3 people. As his blood boiled, Cole was like a person with red eyes in a fight, not afraid of pain at all. He used his 2 swords and opened the Eye of Time. The 3 were no match for him at all, and one of them was knocked off his horse. Another person was stabbed in the eye socket by him. The winter night was like a hot knife entering a block of frozen oil. The armor face protection could not stop the stabbing sword at all. The knight screamed and fell down with his hands covering his face. The last person saw that the situation was not right, so he turned his horse's head and ran away. At this time, the horse that Cole was sitting on was suddenly tripped by vines, and he also fell off the horse. He rolled on the slope for several rounds before he stood up in a dusty face. He didn't know where his body was injured, but at least he could still stand up. There was a hot stream between his forehead. When he fell, his head hit the armor and bled. It happened that the horse of a river knight stopped not far from him. Cole went up to comfort the horse. The horse sniffed him and smelled that it was not its owner, so it started to make trouble. Cole clamped the horse's head with both hands, and the horse was unable to move. He climbed on the horse and kicked the horse's belly with his leg. It obediently followed the instructions and moved forward. The fleeing knight soon saw Cole chasing him from behind. He whipped his horse in panic, urging it to run faster. Panic leads to mistakes. He whipped the horse hard, causing it to lose its pace. Cole soon caught up with him. He begged for mercy in a pleading tone. He didn't know where his sword had fallen. Cole stabbed it lightly. Cole's body was covered with sticky blood. He couldn't tell whether it was the enemy's or his own. When Cole returned to the battlefield, the roaring lion of Lannister had risen in Reveron. He couldn't help but breathe a sigh of relief and showed a bloody smile. It seemed that they won. At this time, he felt like he had drunk a big bowl of white wine. He didn't feel anything when he drank it, but the after effect was not small at all. Suddenly, he relaxed. He only felt a mountain on his shoulders, and the mountains and valleys in front of him were jumping up and down. Someone said something in his ear, but it felt like a cry from outside the soul, sometimes far and sometimes near, long and distant. He couldn't see who was in front of him, one or two. He finally heard the sound of armor hitting the ground, and before him was endless darkness, far, far, far away. Chapter 48 Funeral. My lord, his wounds are festering, and he has a high fever. The monk kept shaking his head. The white-haired boy was talking nonsense, and no one knew what language it was. Since the knight found Cole, he has been unconscious, and the white hair made Kevin imagine. When he first saw him, his hair was just like stubble, and it was impossible to tell whether it was blonde or something else, but now it was silver. Silver hair and purple eyes. Is he the bastard of the Targaryen family? Kevin couldn't help but think in his heart. In the Battle of King's Landing, he followed Tywin and watched the soldiers of the Lannister family kill King's Landing, and blood flowed into the river, and watched the mountain bring 2 female corpses and a baby boy to them. That was Princess Elia Martell of Dorne, and the first wife of Prince Rhaegar. Her clothes were in disarray. Some people said that the mountain raped her before killing her, and the mountain himself did not deny it. He remembered that, when he first met Elia, Tyrion had just been born, and she was full of joy, and said that she would adopt this deformed child. At that time, she should be the same age as the silver-haired boy, just an innocent girl. When he saw her again, the Martell princess had become a graceful and elegant crown princess. The last time he saw her was a corpse. He remembered that Tywin's face was very bad at that time. Princess Elia was disheveled, and the little Princess Rhaenyra Targaryen was stabbed more than 50 times. She was only 3 years old at that time, not as tall as Kevin's legs. Kevin remembered that, when he saw her in the Red Castle, she always held a black cat, which she called Balerion. The most uncomfortable of the 3 corpses was the baby with a festering head. It was said that the mountain slapped the baby against the wall with one hand. In a pile of rotten meat, Kevin saw the bloody white gold hair. Kevin himself and his son were both blonde, and he could recognize them at a glance. The monk told him that when the gods summoned back a heroic soul, they would make him pure and flawless, so the child's hair would turn white. Kevin sighed and thought that it was the gods who wanted him to do so. Half of the credit for this victory was due to this child, but if the gods really favored him, they would let him wake up. After visiting Cole, Kevin left with his guards. After conquering Reveron, he still had a lot to do. In the tent, only Cole's servant Munda was busy at this time. Kevin told him to take good care of Cole, and tell him if he woke up. When he opened his eyes, this time it was no longer a pavilion with carved beams and painted rafters, but a vast white world. In the white, He saw a virtual door, standing tall. In front of the door was a scale. Cole himself was standing on one side of the scale. Where is this? Is it a dream? On the opposite side of him, there stood a group of horses. The huge door frame that looked like a whirlpool was flashing purple ripples. After Cole stood on the scale, the horse on the opposite side flew up. Cole saw a person riding on it. He could not look at the face, and could only see the long braids from a distance. After the horse flew away, the scale began to slowly sink. The constant shaking made Cole unable to stand at all. The knob of the scale creaked, and Cole lay on the plate. The huge iron chain holding the tray above his head made a clanging friction sound. Cole lay on the edge of the scale and looked into the distance. The originally white world was instantly filled with blood and flames. Pillars of fire gushed out from the cracks in the ground, and the magma emitted gurgling hot bubbles. The scale was taking Cole closer and closer. What made Cole's scalp numb was that the red and black blood on both sides of the magma was seeping out from the cliff wall. Broken limbs, half a skull head, and countless wails that seemed to come from the abyss. Cole turned over in fear and grabbed the chain of the tray. Now he had only one belief, that he had to keep climbing up. Keep climbing up. Kevin was stationed at Riverrun. He only left 2,000 men to guard the castle with him. He had the rest of the soldiers led to support Lannister's northern army. Cole was also taken away by his firemen. Kevin originally did not allow it, but the firemen did not listen at all, and even drew their swords. Thinking that Tywin had a maester with better medical skills, Kevin had no choice but to let them go. Now it was calculated that the army had been on the march for 2 days, and it was estimated that they had reached the intersection of the King's Road, which was also the confluence point of the Trident. Suddenly, the crow feeder brought a letter from a raven. The letter was from his brother Tywin. He praised Kevin generously and mentioned Cole at the end of the letter. After capturing Riverrun, Kevin quickly sent out a raven to deliver the news to Tywin. In fact, before the battle, Kevin wanted to ask Tywin for his opinion, but he thought that the raven might be caught by the enemy, so he held back. The child did not survive the high fever, and he was escorted to the North End camp by a dozen knights. Tywin said that the free folks were in trouble, saying that the Flatlanders killed their king. Tywin personally presided over the child's funeral. They put him on a raft, asked the Silent Sisters to sew up the wound on his back, and dressed him in red and gold silk according to the requirements of the free folks. He did not have a noble coat of arms, so Tywin wrapped him with his own lion pennant, and placed all his property on the raft according to the custom of the free folks, except for a sword. The free folks also moved a broken stone, and put it on it. Kevin thought of the sword he was holding tightly in his hand when he was brought in that day, and it seemed that it had not been taken away, and it should be in his tent now. Thinking that his property should be sent back to his family, Kevin sent people to Cole's tent to get his things, but he heard that all the things were taken away by the squirmunder. Kevin was very angry about this, and he sent cavalry to hunt down the squire. When the raft went down the river, Tywin personally shot arrows with his bow and gave him the highest standard of etiquette. The free folk stopped making trouble and were led back to the Moon Mountains by a free folk named Timid. The eagle flew over the valley and river. In the distance, a lonely raft was slowly going down the river. Suddenly, an old tree fell from the river bank, and a wave of waves covered the raft with a crash. The flames went out, and even the ropes that bound the corpse had not been burned. The river was turbulent all the way, and the river was sometimes calm and sometimes impatient. On the rolling river, someone saw a raft floating. When they saw the person lying on it, they all bowed their heads and prayed silently, saying a sentence of mercy from the gods. A crow flew by and landed on the raft. It pecked at the white body and suddenly seemed to be frightened by something, then flew away with a quack. A towering waterfall appeared in front of the raft, and the raft flew down quickly, not afraid of the rolling waves under the cliff. It flew down the cliff, and was not overturned during the ups and downs, and then continued to rejoice, accompanied by the rolling river, and rushed into the CPS. The protagonist died, and the play ended. Doghead saves life. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story, and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 49 Little Mouse. Arya, how do you know this place? When Eddard Stark got up from the sewage-filled ditch, he asked his daughter with a puzzled look on his face. Suddenly, a person on the shore caught Eddard's attention. He was wearing a heavy brown robe with rough fabric, a wide figure, and a cloak covering his face. Eddard instantly became alert until the cloak was slowly pulled down, revealing a rough face full of stubble. It was hard to believe that the last time he saw him, he was still dressed as a jailer, and the last time he saw him, he was a eunuch with greasy hair and powdered face. How many faces does he have? Good morning, my lord. He saluted Eddard with a rough voice, which was different from the sweet voice in the past. But Eddard felt a chill on his back, as if the person in front of him was not a human, but a terrifying giant spider. This person was Varys, known as the Octopus Spider, the intelligence manager of the Royal Council. Varys? What do you want? Eddard frowned and stared at that face. He thought of what Cersei Lannister said to him, in the game of power, if you don't win, you will die. Your daughter is very brave. I just told her the location of the dungeon. Eddard looked unkind. You shouldn't involve a child. There are some things we can't control, Lord Stark, just like your eldest son has led the army south. Rob, who else but him? The boat is ready for you, my lord. As for whether you can return to the north, it depends on you and your daughter. This place is right on the coast, where the sewage of the Red Castle is discharged. A small boat is upside down among the gravel on the shore. It seems to have rained, and there is a little chill in the air, which makes Eddard feel like he was born in the north, but this chilly breeze is too gentle compared to the north. Varys did not tell him that a few days ago, the White Ravens of the Citadel had brought news that the long summer was about to end, and Westeros was about to usher in winter. The Maesters predicted that after the long summer, there would be a long night. This 10-year summer would bring a long winter. I know you can, Varys. Help me save Sansa, please. Eddard, who was always cold, had a pleading look on his proud face. You are making it too difficult for me. I'm just an unarmed intelligence chief. I advise you to leave King's Landing as soon as possible, my lord. Your eldest daughter is well taken care of by the queen. The queen even agreed to let her continue to marry our king. He is not a king. Varys smiled lightly. There are several kings in the kingdom now. I heard that even Lord Tywin has a barbarian king under his command. I ask you again, Varys, what is your purpose? You clearly did not promise to help me in prison. Eddard looked at the eunuch. Robert spared your life. You shouldn't have let that boy Joffrey sit on the Iron Throne. I don't mind who sits on the Iron Throne, my lord. Eunuchs have no honor. Varys put his hands in the pockets of his white hemp coat. Robert is a fool, but it is undeniable that he brought peace to Westeros. I should have told you that in this castle, the only outsider with power is the king. He doesn't care who sits on the Iron Throne. He only wants wine and women. I once protected him from harm, but you hurt him, my lord. You could have given the Iron Throne to that child, and then returned to the north safely. I think the warm Winterfell must be much more comfortable than the dungeon. Oh, sorry, I heard that there are hot springs flowing in the walls of Winterfell. I think you don't even need to light a fire to live in it. Is there your little bird in Winterfell? Ed asked unkindly. Varys tilted his head. Who knows? Crows are everywhere, because they have a pair of black wings, but little birds don't, and neither do spiders. Winter is coming, my lord. The enemy is not in front of us, but across the sea. Varys pulled up his hood and walked into the night, his steps light and silent, like a shadow. Are we going to save Sansa? Arya asked him. Eddard looked up at the towering red castle on the cliff, then shook his head. Varys was right. He should return to the north. He didn't have anyone he could trust here. After pushing the boat into the water, the journey ahead would definitely not be easy. The Lannisters would definitely be looking for them throughout the territory. If his leg was not injured, it would be fine, but since he fell off the horse, every time his leg moved, it felt like someone was chiseling his bones with a knife. It was Arya who pushed the boat into the water. Eddard's eyes were full of guilt. He shouldn't have brought his children to King's Landing to suffer. As a father of several children, as Robert's best friend, as the monarch of Winterfell, and as Catelyn's husband, he felt that he had failed. Under the moonlight, a small boat slowly sailed out of King's Landing. Varys stood in the dark and watched them go away. No one knew what the octopus spider was thinking, and no one knew what he wanted. He was like his little bird, like a mystery. Arya still remembered the words she overheard. Those guys on horseback are coming, and the little princess gave birth to a little horse king for them. We need time to give Aegon. If the Seven Kingdoms continue to make trouble like this, how can we stop those barbarians on horseback? They can't cross this strait, and the adults in Westeros will not welcome outsiders. There are enough ships in the east to send those guys here with their horses. Now all the city-states are recruiting mercenaries and buying unsullied, and those mercenary groups and slave owners are making a lot of money. If the wildlings with braids really take over Westeros, our efforts will be in vain. You must stabilize this place. I know you can do it. If not, I will ask the faceless men of Bravos to take action. Who do you want to kill? Daenerys, Drogo, or Joffrey, or Stannis? No matter who you kill, I just hope that our efforts will not be in vain. Old friend, we have been planning for this for so many years. You can get more title or power. I'm already in the highest position, and it won't change anything if someone else takes it. I know what you want. Aegon will satisfy you, and you have seen the child. At least he is better than the incestuous freak sitting in the chair now. Arya heard the broad man sigh. I once thought that Aerys would be a wise ruler. Oh, it seems like a little mouse is hiding here. Arya finally heard the man say this, and then she was discovered. Chapter 50 Blood Magic. Khaleesi, you should kill or drive away the witches. They can do terrible witchcraft and make peace with demons. The maid Jaqui whispered in Daenerys' ear. The Blood Witch. No, she saved her star and son. That day, Drogo staggered on his horse all day. At night, she saw blood flies flying in their tent. They all said that blood flies only appeared on dead people. Even though his injuries were so serious, Drogo insisted on riding a horse. The person who saved her star and son was Mirri Maz Duur, also known as the Witch Witch. She claimed to be a doctor. She wrapped a bunch of herbs in a sheepskin to wrap Drogo's wound. Drogo had a big cut on his chest and an arrow wound. Drogo tore the Witch Witch's medicine after only 5 days. After that, his injuries got worse and worse. The wound was wrapped in a wet sheepskin. His face was so pale that there was no blood at all. He rode a horse blankly all day and did not respond to anyone's call. Ser Jorah Mormont whispered to her on horseback that if Khal Drogo fell off his horse or could not ride, his Khaleesi would leave and follow the new Khal, which was now the bandits under Drogo's command. Some people said that the witch had killed the Khal until the night of the 11th day when Dany accidentally touched Drogo and found that he was already cold. She trembled and called him softly, but he did not move, and there was no sound at all. Blood flies buzzed around and even landed on them. Each one was as big as a bee, flapping its wings and making a disgusting sound. Dany kept calling her Drogo with a crying voice. She felt that the sky had fallen down. In her helplessness, she thought of the dragon eggs. She quickly ran to the box of dragon eggs and took out 3 dragon eggs. Unfortunately, he forgot that he was pregnant, so he tripped and fell, and the dragon eggs fell to the ground. Blood also seeped out between her feet, and the blood dyed the dragon eggs red. Dany picked up the dragon egg while enduring the pain, lifted Drogo's hand, put the dragon egg in her arms, and then leaned over to hug him. She kept comforting herself that she was the last true dragon. Daenerys born in the storm, and the gods would not take away her Drogo, nor her stars and sons. Someone heard her crying and rushed in. When they saw her crying on Drogo's body, they instantly understood something. Several blood guards came over after hearing the sound, and then they saw a scene that frightened them extremely. A bloody horse head was cut off horizontally, and large pieces of horse blood were smeared on Drogo's body. The witch was smearing the blood while muttering devil spells. There were heavy shadows, and those shadows were people, horses, and all kinds of strange shapes. The blood ridder saw the shadows whirring into Drogo's body, and then his lifeless body began to beat, and the black S whirled, and suddenly rushed into the sky, and no one knew where it went. The witch gave a high-pitched cry and fell unconscious. No one knew where the black air went. After the sounds of ghosts and wolves howling dissipated in the straw tent, they saw Drogo's chest began to float, and his breathing gradually rose. At this time, the silver-haired Khaleesi groaned in pain. Her belly was already swollen, and she was about to give birth. Her body was also red. She screamed black wings, and the maids rushed up, and the midwife was called, but the horse riding the world prophesied by the Doshkaleen did not come out. Dany would not tell them that she dreamed of a real dragon that day, dreaming of her brother Rhaegar. People said that he had beautiful silver hair and an elven voice, and was the last real dragon. But all Dany saw was a head of short silver hair. He was wearing black armor, riding on a warhorse, and his red cape fluttering in the wind. Below him was a battlefield of blood and fire, with 3 rivers crossing and converging. His opponents were outnumbered, and he had only 4 guards beside him, but he won, not losing to the usurper as people said. His warhorse fell, and he fell off too. Dany saw him rolling a long way on the slope, covered with trees and thorns. The sword in his hand was cold and shining. It must be their ancestral sword, Dark Sister. Viserys told him about the 2 heirloom swords of the Targaryen family. One was Dark Sister and the other was Blackfire. It was said that Blackfire was in Essos, and she must find it back. Dany finally saw him standing in the middle of a battle. She walked over and took off his helmet, but it was hazy, and she could only vaguely see the short hair. Suddenly, a pair of black wings flew down from the sky, surprising her. When Dany opened her eyes, she found herself surrounded by a group of people. Rhaegar in her belly was very calm and did not make any noise. She gently touched her belly and whispered in her heart, "You know what? Little Rhaegar, I dreamed of your uncle. You will be as tall and brave as him." At this time, the maid Jaqui told her with a complicated look that Khal Drogo had woken up. For Dany, what happened was like a nightmare, and now she woke up. She watched with joy as Drogo opened his eyes in a daze, and then his strong body once again mounted his horse, but his original horse was dead. Horses are the faith of the Dothraki people, and Drogo was even angry about this, but Dany told him that it was the fierce horse that brought him back from the Darkland, just because he was the father of the prophesied horse riding the world. Drogo did calm down his anger after hearing this, and then rode another horse to patrol his Khalazar. Drogo did not tell anyone about his dream. Only the witch was trembling all over. Only she knew what she had done. Blood magic. She used blood magic to bring people back to life. She couldn't help but think of the prophecy of salvation spread by Char. After the long summer, the stars will weep blood, as Orahei will be reborn in the land of smoke and salt, and awaken the dragon in the stone. The silver-haired woman was the descendant of the evil dragon. She must be pregnant with the dragon. Thinking of the Dothraki prophecy that the prince will ride the world's horse to conquer the end of the world. They are alive, the child, and the man. Disaster. This will be a disaster that will sweep the world. It was she who released the dragon. Cole didn't know how long he had been climbing. He kept climbing up. The scales disappeared, and the gate of the virtual evolution also disappeared. All he could see was an iron chain, a chain going up, and below him was a piece of fire and purgatory. He was so tired from climbing, but he didn't dare to stop at all, because the magma was rising rapidly, and the broken limbs and bodies on his side were constantly pulling him and dragging him down. He prayed, "If this is a dream, please let him wake up soon, no matter if it is the new god or the old god." And in the distant seaport, a raft that had been traveling for who knows how long, carrying a stone and a corpse, slowly drifted into the trembling sea. Let me talk about the setting of blood magic. In the original book, the setting was to resurrect the Horse King by sacrificing Drogo's mount and the child of the Dragon Mother, but the blood magic only made him a vegetable. And here, because the blood of the Dragon Mother stained the dragon egg, and the dragon egg was smeared on the Horse King, the evil god of blood magic set his sights on Cole. I said some causal element here, because Cole changed the trajectory of the world. He naturally had to accept some unprovoked disasters. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.